Let's get back to the word. Let's talk about the bands. You had Nirvana, Motörhead, obviously Oasis. What were the boys like from Oasis?
I'd known Noel for years.
Yeah.
And then it was my ex, the mother of my kids. She worked in Spiral Carpets because she had the retainer for Mute Records. So Noel's contract for Oasis off Creation was actually faxed through to my missus's office. I was under a lot of pressure to get them on because I'd got so many other Manchester bands on. And this actually helped. I think it helped get Oasis on. Through the Happy Mondays have been getting great press for about 2 years without quite delivering. And Tony Wilson hated the Stone Roses. And what was even worse was at the time when she died, so she went to hospital and died that night. She then got buried in Stretford Cemetery. But my mum and dad couldn't afford a headstone that at the time cost 40 quid.
Terry, thanks for coming on.
No, you're welcome.
Mate, I must say, I was so excited knowing that you were coming on because if you cast our minds back to 1990 to 95, I went to school in Cheadle Hulme actually, and all the lads would get to Friday and go, the word's on tonight. Can't wait for the word. Can't wait for the word. And the word just 10 o'clock. It's 10 o'clock. 11 o'clock on Channel 4. We'd all stay up. There was no mobile phones then. Then the next day we'd be talking about what happened on the word. And you, and I always loved you as a presenter. I loved how nice you were, but I also loved the mistakes you made sometimes. And, you know, your presenting style is so relaxed.
The snarky comments you'd sneak in, which actually you'd only get if you were
you know what I mean? Would they make the word now on British TV?
I think it was a lot of different circumstances came together at once. So with the word, Manchester had suddenly become hip from about the middle of '89 onwards. The rest of the country was slow to catch on because even like with what became branded as Manchester, which was around November '89. Before that, even the Stone Roses, who led it all, they didn't even get a write-up in their own right, other than live gig reviews and an album review, in the NME until after they played the Empress Ballroom, Blackpool.
No way.
Which was sort of July or August time or something. And then I remember the NME, Jack Barron, reviewing the Stone Roses debut album, and I was working on Key 103 at the time, and I had 100% free choice because I'd won 2 National Sony Awards in the Best Specialist Music Show. So they thought, yeah, go on, good for our branding, because the branding of the station was music, not music, whatever that meant. And so I had a free choice. I used to play 3 Stone Roses tracks every night.
Brilliant.
And so they were the big band, but everyone was like behind. They gave it 6 out of 10. The NME 6 out of 10. Now when I listen to them now, you got like BBC 6 Music and all that doing their Manchester memories type podcast where they've not actually spoken to anybody who grew up within the centre of Manchester. Yeah. So they have a few band members, but you know what I mean. It's like I'm going because Steve Lamacq worked for the NME. Stuart McConey worked for the NME. They never gave the Roses a write-up until much later on, and they all preferred the Mondays, who were tied up with Tony Wilson, and there was a lot of hype behind the Mondays. They hadn't actually delivered musically, really. They were a kind of 6.5 out of 10 band, really, until they did
bummed. I mean, it seems different now listening to Shaun Ryder singing in a weird way, but singers were singers back in the day. So when Shaun Ryder came in and did his thing, I'm not even sure what you would call that.
Well, I mean, no, we did have it because you'd have The Fall and other bands, and a lot of the indie side that the bands couldn't sing that well. But what it was that they were the first band to get given the production for the dance music, so using Paul Oakenfold, Andy Weatherall, all of that. And then when you saw them live, there was that kind of rolling funk sound. Yeah. And I remember writing, saying that they remind me at their best, when they weren't off their heads, of like Talking Heads. And then when they went to get the album After Pills and Thrills, the one that they did in Barbados, and they actually brought in Tina Weymouth and Chris France from Talking Heads. Oh. Now I'm saying nothing.
That was you, that Terry.
Well, I mean, you've got to remember, I had like a big say in what went on. So in Manchester in 89, 90, you had all these bands, all this music, and I was the first one who was able to go in there. And I've been doing this for 8 years. I'd won 2 national, which was unbelievable at the time. These weren't small gongs, you know, the National Sony Radio Awards. And so I went in a unique position. Then I ended up taking over the page covering the up-and-coming bands in the Manchester Evening News, the Word page. And it was only after Tony Wilson died that I realised he was the one who pushed for a page in the Evening News to write about Manchester bands, because he'd had a big falling out with the NME. So Factory Records, none of their stuff was being reviewed in the NME anymore. So he thought he needed something local. So he taught Mike Unger, who was the editor of the Manchester Evening News, into creating this page in the Evening News. And
I remember it.
And then sneaked Mick Middles in to write it. He was very pro-Factory at the time.
Yeah.
And it was so weird to think, you know, so really Tony was even behind the name of the show inadvertently. And Mike Unger had called it The Word because he was a Scouser, and that was a song on Rubber Soul, I think, by the Beatles.
That's right.
The Rubber Soul album.
Oh, that's where it came from.
Yeah.
Amazing.
You know, because he came up with the name, The Word, for that page.
Yeah. Look, let's cast our minds back to you've just had a birthday, May the 8th, 1960, yeah?
Yeah.
So
scary.
I know. Well, it is. And if we cast our mind back to then, you brought up in Old Trafford. What was life like then?
Well, I mean, I was the 4th of 6 kids, you know, as I joke about it, just outside the medals.
Yeah.
You know, the other one I always like to say is we had the one thing money couldn't buy, poverty. But it was, but I mean, it was tough because you know, both my parents are born in Dublin, and my dad had come over, you know, just after sort of 1945 VJ Day. In fact, my dad's best mate was John Sheridan's mum's uncle.
Really?
Yes, Tommy Cody. And they both came from the Liberties in Dublin over on the same boat together and worked at Massey Ferguson and Jesse Broad's in Trafford Park back in the day. But then, I mean, what was a defining and really sad thing for me was I had an older sister who died when she was 11, when I was only like 3, well, 2.5 really, 3. So I grew up in a house that was grieving.
Your mother?
Well, you know what I mean? Everyone's devastated. You know, I had an older brother, older sister. I mean, younger brother and sister hadn't even been born. And she was just kind of never mentioned again. All the photos disappeared, went into drawers, because it was just too painful a memory.
How did it affect you? How did that affect you?
Well, I mean, in the whole family, it meant that psychologically, it just meant you learned to put up and shut up.
Yeah.
You never brought problems home because you would upset your mum and she had enough to do. You kind of knew that you read a room very quickly. But it also meant you carried a lot of tensions outside of the house with you, you know what I mean? Yeah. So, you know, it's different. But it was a good area to grow up in insofar as our street, Duke Street, Brooks Bar End of Old Trafford, you were basically Irish descent or Jamaican, you know.
Yeah, of course.
So we all loved reggae, but we had Catholic guilt, you know.
Absolutely.
Just about summed us up. But it was great to grow up in an area like that because it defined a lot of it. Yeah. And one of the things that I always did was always, because I was massively into reggae, I managed a reggae band in the mid-80s, we're from Derby. And then even on the Word, the first thing that I got them to agree with was we would have at least one black artist on every week. I mean, that's not a hardship music-wise, but then, so, you know, if you think about it, we had Public Enemy on, Mary J. Blige, Snoop Dogg, you know, all of that kind of stuff, a lot of the big British ones, you know, and then obviously, guest-wise, Dave Chappelle, Eddie Murphy, Whitney Houston.
Did you have Eddie Murphy on?
Well, I interviewed him over in the USA, you know what I mean? I had him for like an hour. Weird experience that was. I've been to his house when I interviewed his brother. We interviewed his brother at Eddie Murphy's house, you know.
I never knew about this. This is a revelation.
Yeah, we did everyone. I mean, you've got to remember that. I mean, I did James Brown, that was before the word even came on. I interviewed
What
him
was
in
he
Aiken,
like? Was he
South
off his nut
Carolina.
on crack?
No, because he was in prison at the time, so he was allowed out on day release. But yeah, obviously he's wild and eccentric.
You seen that interview with him with the presenter? She's like an American presenter, and she goes, "Welcome to the show, Mr. Brown." He goes, "I'm glad to be on the show, motherfucker." You'll see that one.
That's kind of what he's like. But the weird one for me, so he got arrested and put in prison for attempted murder on his wife, and then resisting arrest with the police. He had to shoot his tyres out on his big SUV, and then he was high on angel dust.
Yeah. It's in the film, isn't it?
So what? Well, I've not seen the film, but what happened then was he had this production company in Washington, On the Potomac Productions. You know, all these sort of really smart lawyers, and they were shooting a documentary on him on film, and they offered us access to that. And I think we had to pay them about $10,000, but it was too big a deal because he hadn't done an interview for years. So he used to get day release once a week to go and work with recovering junkies and winos. And so we just bribed the wardens, $1,500 for them to take a 4 or 5 hour walk around the block.
Yeah.
That's insane.
And then he was taken to this doctor's house who was a mutual friend. It was like, be a doctor in the USA, I'd say.
Yeah.
This was really posh. And they had a piano there, and we sat him at the piano. But because you're shooting it on film, it took a while, to set up and everything.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I had him to myself when I don't think he'd seen a piano for months. No. And so he started playing for me. So for about half an hour, I had him doing a private concert for me. And the frustration was like, get this filmed.
Yeah.
Because obviously
Did you not film it?
Well, because he was still getting the lighting set up and bits of, and then things like that and all of,
God.
And it took ages to do it. And but I remember like chatting to him about the great vocalists of that era when he first emerged in the 50s, being like Jackie Wilson, Little Willie John, did the original Fever, Clyde McPhatter, Out of the Drifters, and he was taking them off.
No.
You know, like when Sammy Davis Jr. do like Dean Martin, then he'd do like Frank Sinatra. He was doing that with Clyde Fatter and Little Willie John.
That's amazing.
And then I remember him telling me this story about Elvis. He said, night Elvis died, he said, I took a flight. I stood over him. I had to go. And I went, why'd you do it, Elvis? Why'd you leave the country? Country boys should stay in the country and not move to the city.
Wow.
And you're going, okay.
Jesus.
That told his
corpse,
him.
So when I was interested in how you got your big break, and it was actually by chance, wasn't it, on a program called Devil's Advocate?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those stories where I can never tell my kids, because my kids did say to me when they got to that, around the time I was on Celebrity Big Brother, because they'd never really seen me on anything before that, because although I was doing TV shows, they were always on at like past their bedtime. And you don't really, it's not something you talk to your kids about, really. And so he said, Dad, how did you end up, working on the TV and all that? And I went, well, and you think, well, what do they say? Work hard. Mine was like by smoking dope and staying up till 2 a.m.
It was unemployed, to give context. It was some unemployed youth,
I'd gone to Polytechnic and ended up with an HND in applied biology. And there were no jobs because it was the early days of Thatcherism, and she'd wiped all the jobs out, especially in Manchester, funny enough, because we had all the apprenticeships and all that, of heavy
YTS.
Industry, steel, this is before YTS. Everything just got wiped out overnight by us. So we were in a bad way, the way places like Liverpool were and Newcastle and all of that beforehand. We were just suddenly hit by her in that period between about 1980 and 81. And there were riots in the summer of 81.
Toxteth as well. And
so Moss Side, Toxteth, Handsworth, Brixton, St Paul's in Bristol. And they had a Scarman report. And the Scarman report looked into the causes of the riots. And the main one was the high levels of youth unemployment. So they took 100 kids from inner city Manchester. Now, what it was I was going round to different mates of mine, would be like, smoking dope till 2 in the morning. I couldn't get out of bed till 2 in the afternoon. And my mum was working on the school dinners at my old primary school. She'd get up, go to work at like 11, come home at 2, and I'd still be in bed or just got up. with all my hair like that, And a woman that she worked with, Mrs. Flanagan, Josie Flanagan, on the school dinners, her oldest lad, Kevin Flanagan, ran an unemployed youth group in Trafford Park called the Young Christian Workers, it was tied up with St Anthony's Catholic Church. So he was looking for recruits who were on the dole, and she said, would your Terry be interested in doing it? He's on the dole. So I wouldn't have done it, except a mate of mine who was working for Manchester Liners at the time had just been laid off too. And because he said he'd go, we went for this interview, got interviewed, then we used to turn up every Sunday, get filmed, 100 of us, and it was the World in Action team made it, and it went out on ITV. We'd film it about 3 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon, and then it'd go out at like 20 to 7 on a Sunday night. Well, it was 100 kids from inner city Manchester. It ran for 7 weeks, but there's nothing else on the telly.
Yeah.
It was the Money programme and Songs of Praise.
I remember.
So everyone used to watch us.
Yeah.
And it'd be like lads going, well, the trouble with school is you don't learn you nothing.
It was almost like a reality show, wasn't it?
Yeah,
really?
But it was funny because it was so Manchester, you know what I mean? And then people started arguing, because we're like a euphemism-free zone.
Yeah.
And then they couldn't find any Tories, so they shipped a few in from like Warrington.
Yeah.
And everyone would be picking on them. And then they had a few NF skinhead types from round Longside. Yeah, right. And one of them was from down south, this Frank. And it was just like, it was weird. And then Johnny Marr out of Smiths,
Johnny Marr.
age 17.
Are you still friends with Johnny Marr?
No, I mean, I was never friends with him. I was on friendly terms with him. But then I gave him a hard time in an interview. I mean, I was being a bit the ADHD. Yeah. So I was. It was when when the court case between Morrissey and Mike Joyce was on.
Yeah.
And then it turned out, and I was I was interviewing Johnny and Bernard Sumner.
Yeah.
In the studio on Key 103 back in 98 for the new electronic album. So I was pushing Johnny on how this hadn't all been sorted out before. So I insisted a bit too much, so I think it gave him the ump. So the next time I saw him was at Mark Collins' wedding, and I went, all right, Johnny. He didn't even let on to me.
Oh, didn't he?
He has that rep.
Does he really?
Oh, yeah. But the thing is, I used to talk to him when we did Devil's Advocate, because I was into all the local bands.
Yeah.
Plus, his surname, Marr, M-A-R-R, should be spelled M-A-H-E-R.
Yeah.
So he's spelled it phonetically because he didn't want to get confused with John Marr. It was a mate of mine back in the day who I went to St Alphonsus and St Bede's with. He was a drummer with the Buzzcocks.
Of course.
The more famous John Marr at the time.
Which bands, apart from Johnny Marr or musicians, did you know growing up then who made it?
Well, I mean, so in my year at St Bede's, in my class was Chris Nagle, who was a producer, at Strawberry. And
I've heard of him, yeah.
Did He did the first Charlatans single, Indian Road.
Strawberry Studios.
Yeah, and he engineered Unknown Pleasures.
Yeah.
And a lot of the work that Hannett got the credit for, Hannett was a bit off his face at the time, and so Chris Nagle sorted it all out. And then he was the engineer on the first New Order album. He did the Yargo album, Body Beat. I mean, he's produced all sorts of people, Chris Nagle. So he was in my class. John Marr was in my year, but if you came from the same primary school, they put you in different classes. Yeah. In case you've got a friend and an ally to protect you from the bullying levels at a Catholic grammar, which it was like Borstal with incense speeds in them days. All boys. And then the year below me was Andy Connell out of Swing Out Sister.
No way, Swing Out Sister, of
course.
So,
and a certain ratio. In our Tony's year, and he's like 7 years older than me, was Rob Gretton, who managed New Order and Joy Division and set up Factory Records with Tony Wilson. In our Kev's year was Paul Hanley out of The Fall. And then a few years younger than him was James Madrisky out of Pure Essence. And then
that's a crazy amount of people who made it.
Then if you look at all the other Catholic schools like Severian, you had Manny.
Of course.
Then you had all the members of the Waltones, including Mark Collins, who's now in the Charlatans.
Yeah.
Della Cell, you had Tony Wilson. You had, it was a kind of weird little. I mean, they used to joke, and Tosh Ryan, God rest his soul, who died last year, set up Rabid Records.
Yeah.
When Martin Hannett and all that were moving from Rabid to Factory, he said, "You'll be all right there. They're all Catholic." And Martin Hannett said, "But you're Catholic too, aren't you, Tosh?" and in some ways, the weird it doesn't sound very PC, but there's a kind of truth to it. The story of Manchester music from the 60s and 70s is of the Catholics taking over from all the Jewish guys who used to run it. You know, like Harvey Lisberg, Danny Batesh, you know, and Kennedy Street Enterprises and all of those guys. And then if you think, what's his name, Don Arden.
Graham Goldman.
But I'm thinking about the managers, the guys who ran it. And then, you know, so you had all the guys out of 10cc, and he wrote the songs for everyone, didn't he?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But then Peter Noon, Herman's Hermits, another ex-St. Bede's.
Was he really?
Yeah. And a guy called Tony Cassidy, who was Manchester's premier mod band in the 60s.
Yeah.
Great voice, called, Louis... The St. Louis Union.
Yeah.
They only ever had one big hit, and it was a cover of the Beatles' Girl. But they were really good, you know, they were a great live band, the St. Louis Union.
Still touring, probably, with that one big hit.
Well, no, because he died, sadly. He ended up a teacher at Cheadle Hulme School, Tony Cassidy, for years.
Cheadle Hulme Grammar?
Yeah.
Really? I went to Hume Hall across the road.
Yeah. Tony Cassidy.
Yeah.
So he's at ex-St. Bede's. You know, so there was always that connection. And then if you think of where I grew up, within that square quarter of a mile, you had Marcel King out of Sweet Sensation. You had Denise Johnson, you know, you had Martin Merchant, Sugar Merchant out of Audio Web, who was also, you know, reggae singer.
Wild.
You had MC Tunes, you had all the guys out of the Ruthless Rap Assassins, you know, Kermit Leveridge.
Yeah.
You had, I mean, just loads of people.
That's
really.
that's such a large amount of people.
You know, it's just a little pocket. You know, so there was always something going on.
Yeah.
There was always a certain vibe about it, and the beauty of my age is I saw it go from nothing. We're always a lively place for a night out, and we always had, you know, good taste in music, and we had that Northern Soul scene, and we were into funk, and, you know, we were a little bit edgy. But Liverpool was the cooler place because they'd had the Beatles and they'd had more, you know, we'd had big pop bands like the Hollies, you know, Freddie and the Dreamers, Herman's Hermits and all that. But we didn't have that coolness until maybe, you know, 10cc.
Yeah.
And but they didn't have that cool thing of a rock band because they had like 4 different lead singers, really, didn't they?
Well, we interviewed Graham, who was lovely, and the interview's great. And I asked him. Oh, don't worry about that. We have a cat.
I've got no idea.
We have a cat walking in and out.
No, I'm going to stick it in the kitchen or whatever.
And so we had Graham on from 10cc, and I asked him, "Give us your greatest rock and roll story." And he said, "We didn't have any. We just went to bed with a cup of tea."
Well, I mean,
I knew he was going to say that.
But the thing is, actually, and this is a reality. You know, when you look into his work ethic.
Oh God,
right?
his work ethic was amazing.
But his work ethic, and all of them, really.
Yeah.
You know, and then that was the Bee Gees' work ethic.
Yeah.
That was in Spiral Carpets, Clint Boone, their work ethic. They were the most rehearsed band. They sound better now than ever.
Yeah.
Oasis, Noel Gallagher, their work ethic. You know, that's why he started. I think in some ways Noel got irritated with all the rest of the guys in the band because they got too carried away, whereas he'd toured the world with the Spiral Carpets, and he thought, you know, you don't want to let this go.
No.
When it's taken me so long in his head to get there, whereas like to Liam, it would have felt like overnight success.
Yeah.
I think, you know, someone like Liam now gets it.
Yeah. No, I think he does. I think I was reading about him quite a lot, and he actually drinks, you know, instead of having a JD and Coke and 20 fags and a line of Coke, he has like honey and lemon for singing now. And
I've seen that, mixing a bit of turmeric with some apple cider vinegar.
It depressed me a bit. Right. I thought, whatever. Now, my favourite period of my life was the 90s, by far. Right, you were part of my period of life because, you know, that time with the Word and stuff.
But it was aimed at people your age.
It was,
Word.
yeah.
It was aimed at.
I was about 17.
Yeah, it was aged at really
16,
that was
16, 17.
It was aimed at those kids who were dying to be old enough to go out properly.
Yeah.
But couldn't quite go out yet.
Yeah.
So the idea of the Word was we would bring a night out into your living room.
That's what it was like.
And that was the idea behind it, because before then, so-called youth programmes, you know, like Network 7, you know, they had good moments, but they never quite delivered. They were always a little bit sort of glib and middle class and trying too hard to be really trendy, you know, with like, you know, everyone dressed in like, you know, leather trousers and, you know, oh, here I am, you know, that kind of thing. It just wasn't really what it was like. And I just wanted that kind of looseness because we didn't have to pose, because I knew about the music anyway.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to pose, and we didn't. The only time we missed out on big bands, and this isn't me being big-headed, was when. Oh my God!
Is that the phone again?
I bet you that'll be my lad James.
He's ringing you.
Yeah.
Do you want to answer it? Just answer
Say
it.
hi to James.
Say hi to
knew it was
James.
James. Hiya, James. I'm doing an interview. Can I ring you later? You all right? All right. See you later. Bye. Hey, he played in the same, when he was a kid, the same City Academy team as Cole Palmer.
Did he really? Did he really? Yeah, absolutely. The 90s,
So that was the ethos of the, and like I said, the only time the music booker didn't listen to me was, and this actually helped, I think it helped get Oasis on, was like, I kept saying, we've got to get this band booked, and he wouldn't do it, and he turned it into a joke. The band with the Cranberries doing a song called Linger.
well, we know that one well, don't we?
Well, I used to, every time, the terrible trait I have, and it's the sort of aggressive thing, maybe that's tied up with, the Irish, I don't know, if I win an argument, I'll let you know forever. I will tell you, I told you so every day. Every time I used to walk past him, I'd poke him in the chest and go, Cranberries, Cranberries, Cranberries. Well, you've got to.
Yeah, you've got to,
So
yeah.
don't kid yourself that you've got any clue what you're doing, because he booked some terrible bands, that series,
On
all
the
this
Words?
acid jazz and
I
new
remember.
wave of new wave.
Did
and you've got-
Jamiroquai come on?
Well, no, yeah, but I'm talking about not Jamiroquai. Jamiroquai were good. They came on the same show as when we had Jonathan Ross on.
Yeah.
Because I made him introduce them. Because it goes
think, you know-
Jamiroquai.
Cruel. Oh, brilliant.
Cruel. That was at Manchester. Get that in. That was my opening question to Jonathan Ross. Actually, was like, he just interviewed Madonna, and I said, but when you interviewed Madonna, it seems so crawly. I said, why were you so creepy and crawly around? When he went, well, very astute of you to notice. Terry. But so Jamiroquai, no, they were the good. It was all these bands like Mother Earth and Corduroy, and do you know what I mean? It was almost like, acid jazz. What was it? So it was basically a load of white guys with goatee beards wearing Frank Spencer berets playing old early 70s black American funk.
Like Professors.
It
like,
wasn't,
yeah.
but it wasn't a genuine scene. And
Yeah.
one of the irritating things I used to find about London at that time was they would call 300 people dancing to a certain type of music on a Thursday night a scene, whereas in Manchester we called it a night out.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
We didn't say it might all be the one sort of music. We didn't call it a scene.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember the Berlin Club, and then they had a night at what was called the Berlin, which is very hip. That was before the Wag Club in London, the Berlin, with Ewan Clark and Colin Curtis. But they had another night there where they'd alternate between Northern Soul and Rockabilly. And sort of old blue stuff like Shake Your Money Maker. And that was a great night. All flat tops and check shirts. Really good night.
That was what just struck out at me. The difference. I mean, look, by the way, I love Manchester now. It's epic. It's an amazing place.
I think it was better back in the day.
I think it was.
If you were going to be young, because it was so much cheaper.
Correct.
More available.
Yeah. I think it was. But when, in about the early 2000s, I used to live there when I was filming at Granada, and it was dead and flat until all the high rises started coming up. Previous to that, my fondest memories, Terry, it's got to be the Hacienda, man. Yeah. I mean, you probably didn't need to queue up, but I did. And then, you know what I mean? I was queuing up, probably seeing you walk past, like, there's Terry Christian.
Well, no, I mean, I stopped going there in about... I used to go to the Tuesday night Stone Love thing, when bands are on and stuff.
What date was that?
This would have been maybe 96.
All right, well, I was going then.
But I didn't used to go on the Friday and Saturday because I thought the music had changed too much, and then...
It was around sub time that I used to go.
Yeah. But it was so, I mean, I've still got at home, and funny enough, they gave one and they put it online. So when I was at Key 103, we had a meeting with Tony Wilson about doing a thing live at the Hacienda. And I said, well, yeah, but you can't do it like, the Radio 1 Road Show. Go, hi, here we are at the Hacienda on a Friday night.
Everyone's throwing pills back.
and Graham Park had worked for me in Derby when I'd been a promotions manager of a nightclub called the 20th Century Club, which held 800, and he did our House Nation night. And so what we decided on doing was to get the whole feel was I turned up on a Friday night, went up behind the decks with Pickering and Park, and they's coming on my show at 8:30 on Key 103 every Friday for the last half hour, 8:30 till 9, play what they were going to play for the first time at the Hacienda that night. I remember them playing Black Box Ride on Time and an Acetate.
Do you remember? Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And they bought that in, so that was its first radio play. And then going there, and then we had a setup where you put a video in, because it's got 3 magnetic tracks on. So the digital audio stereo, a straight feed from the decks, and then for the sound effects, people blowing whistles, clapping, cheering, the engineer at Piccadilly, Key 103, had scaffolded 2 boom mics into the ceiling. And that was another magnetic. So that what would have been used for the vision on the videotape was just used another magnetic track.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
To get the sound effects, and then I had to mix it down onto reel-to-reel, and we did every night, every Friday from around the middle of July all the way through until October, and only one of them was ever put out because they couldn't come to an agreement about paying Mike Pickering, Graham Park and the Hacienda. I even did all the boring login forms. It used to drive me mad. But I've only got 2 left, and one of them is August the 18th, and it's only an hour and a half of it. And that's been put online by Mike Pickering. But then I've got one from September. The problem that I found was you'd be doing it every week, but they're more or less playing the same records every week.
Yeah.
In a similar-ish order. So it'd be like, I came to know it, so it'd be like Little Louis, French Kiss, into Black Havana, Cuba, or whatever it was called, and it...
They bring so many memories back to me.
But I mean, I'll sneak you one of them. That Hacienda, but I even had a jingles package made up for it, going new that the Hacienda, like a vocal sound. I had all that done, and so I had all that stuff, but it was on videos, and you needed a special bit of kit to extract it all, and I don't know who would have that kit or where those videos have gone, because I've moved house that many times. And when I got the bullet from Key 103 for playing too much obscure music, according to the new program controller who took over, and I got asked for a quote on that. That was in the Evening News. So, well, we couldn't be playing obscure music like 3 tracks by the Stone Roses every night on the show. And this was 1 week before they went on Top of the Pops with the Happy Mondays. And my quote, this is the best one ever came out with, I went, Shakespeare's obscure if you're illiterate.
Nice, nice.
I'm going to find that cutting.
You're almost like when Kenny Everett played Bohemian Rhapsody. Do you know what I mean? And that became massive.
Oh, because it was like 7 minutes long.
7 minutes long. That, so he slipped that in on the radio, didn't he? And that became a huge anthem, and that was it.
But that was daytime radio, you see. I mean, I was still the evening, 6 till 9, and as long as I kept it within certain parameters between 6 and 7, I could play what I wanted. And live sessions. There's live sessions knocking around online of like the Lars playing live on my show. In 1989, doing, There She Goes, and you just got to balance it up, and it sounds fantastic.
Yeah. What was, look, let's get back to the word. Let's talk about the bands. You had Nirvana, Motörhead, obviously Oasis. What was Snoop Dogg,
Mary J. Blige?
What was Oasis? What were the boys like from Oasis then? Was that the first time you met them?
No, don't be daft. I mean, I'd known Noel for years.
Yeah.
And then it was my ex, the mother of my kids. She worked in Spiral Carpets because she had the retainer for Mute Records. So she obviously knew him from when he was roadieing for them. Then her business partner, Alison, still runs the company, Alison Bell. She lived in India House and was a neighbour of Noel's then girlfriend, Louise Jones, who also worked as the PA for my missus. So Noel's contract for Oasis off Creation was actually faxed through to my missus's office. I was under a lot of pressure to get them on because I'd got so many other Manchester bands on, You know, some of them more than once. But the amount of pressure for them was huge. And the problem that we had was when Supersonic was coming out, we were off air. So I was trying to get them on the very last show, which was the end of March 1994, and that single wasn't going to be out until the middle of April.
Yeah.
And what's really weird, I did one of these documentary series on Britpop. So they interviewed me about how I had to argue the toss, push, you know, with the same guy who turned the Cranberries down. And his excuse for not having Oasis on was, Terry, you've already got a band from Manchester booked on that show. And I'd say, so you wouldn't have two bands from London on the same show? Yeah, he said, but that's different. I said, yeah, it is. You've not had a music scene since Punk in 76. Get them booked. And it was only because the band pulled out at the last minute. And I even got Noel and Liam to come down to mither him, press him in a corner about 6 weeks earlier, you know, to get right in his face. And so basically I was under a lot of pressure to get Oasis on. And like I said, I finally got them on. But this is what I thought was weird. This was like, nobody took any notice of them.
Yeah.
So when we did in the summer, we did repeats of kind of a best of that previous series of The Word that used to go out about 6 o'clock on a Wednesday. We used 2/3 of the band's performances from the previous series, and they didn't include Supersonic by Oasis.
That's wild.
Well, yeah, but you see, I mean, a lot of them, they don't know what they're doing. You know, I mean, this was my big frustration, was I'd worked on radio. I'd worked with people like Carolina Hearn, Craig Cash, Henry Norman, who went on to set up Baby Cow. He was my resident poet in 1985.
Company, yeah.
Devon Daly, who did my jazz funk slot on Radio Derby. He ended up as Trevor Nelson's producer for 5 years. Wow. You know, Conrad Murray now, who's like, you know, high up at SJM and co-managing all the bands. You know, he started off being a scout for new up-and-coming bands from his shows here. You know, John Ronson, the writer, he was my sidekick doing late nights on KFM because I took him on because he'd just been given the bullet as the manager of the Man from Del Monte. And so, and these guys had done like a year and a half working on Movie Watch or Reportage. And, you know, they did Fast Track because he'd gone to the right, sorry, it makes me sound bitter, but it's the truth, the right war games and wanking public school. Even the women.
Oh, it's a closed shop, isn't it?
Well, but it really was. Tarquin, Quentin, Tristram, Sebastian.
Yeah.
Oh, let's not forget Rupert. Don't leave him out, you know. And then Camilla, Drusilla.
Nathaniel.
Well, that's all a bit horny-handed son of toil. But yeah, you'd have them, wouldn't you? Like Ben, Nathan, those sort of names. But yeah, it was kind of... so it was still that era. And it was only as we went on we had one or two normal people. But it was a bit... They weren't that experienced.
Yeah.
And they weren't that organised, so even the good stuff they didn't do it that well. And I used to look sometimes at what we had lined up on a Friday, and I thought, I'd have better guests on a Tuesday night on Key 103 than this.
Yeah.
You know, because you'd put the effort in, and they go, no, that's not interesting. Well, it is.
Oh, yeah.
I said, if you've got 3 criteria for a guest, are they happening now? Are they well known? And have they got something to say? The 2 most important ones are they well known and have they got something to say? Because that what you don't want them is them to be happening now but have nothing to say. Yeah. Even if they are well known, because that's the worst thing. It's the same rule for radio. You don't get bad talkers on, and they were turning down good talkers to get bad talkers on a lot of the time. And you're going, who's been thinking this? So I remember we had for a thing we did, which was like the first of these reality shows, to pick a female presenter for series 2, we did a thing called Word Search, and so it was like a competition, and the winner, and Katie Puckrick ended up winning it. But we had picked dummy bands to be interviewed. So we had Derek Hatton, and then we had this band who were up and coming from Manchester called Take That. And the deal was, if they hung around all day pretending to be the outside broadcast bit, we would have them booked on. And then the following series, every time we didn't have decent guests, I said, get those lads from Manchester on, because I knew that they'd be good. They were good looking. Yeah. You know, we're aimed at, like, if you like, teenagers, and people younger used to watch us, and they'd love Take That. You know, they watch The Word to see something new. You know, not to see someone that they already know necessarily. And we would always have someone like that on. Joe Wiley wouldn't book them. And neither would the editor. So Sebastian Scott. So then between series 2 of The Word and series 3, they blew up massive.
Yeah.
They wouldn't come on The Word, but they were on The Big Breakfast every day.
Every day.
Sebastian Scott had moved to be the editor of The Big Breakfast.
God.
So the guy who'd put the blocks on them coming on our show had moved to there.
I mean, you talk about guests, right? My favourite guest... All right, I'm going to give you 3 guesses who my favourite guest was on The Word. It's a he.
What, Johnny Rotten?
No.
Dave Chappelle?
No. I'm going to quote...
Ollie Reed?
Yes!
Oh, right.
Right. I believe you're a heterosexual.
Yeah, but you know the worst thing is he was pretending to be drunk. He wasn't actually drunk. He knew exactly what was happening. It was so set up. He was so
really?
clunky and awful.
Sorry, I've ruined it
and we'd
for me.
have got a better interview off him if they hadn't have done that. And this was all part of the contrivance when we were employing too many people. The show had built up a reputation by then as being, but everything that used to happen that was a bit mad on it, up until that stage, had happened spontaneously.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't contrived or gimmicky. And we employed too many people who were like, hey, my name's Tarquin, you don't have to be mad to work here, but it helps. And you're going, no, mate. You know, you're from some no-mark satellite town outside of London. Do you know what I mean? You've done nothing. You haven't got that edge. And so there was too much of that. And if you remember also on that show, we had Bill Hicks.
Of course,
and it got a bit wasted because of the focus on this so-called... And it was one of those events, really, if you watch it back, the Ollie Reed thing, it was probably amusing for about 30 seconds.
I know, because there's very small clips of it. There's the little thing he said to you, but then there's the dinosaur in the background.
Oh,
I watched it this morning.
If he'd have seen that bloke, what the Asian lad who kept... I thought he'd have got chinned if he'd have seen that.
Oh my God, I was pissing myself this morning watching that.
Putting everyone off, really.
So basically Oliver Reed's there, and he's doing this thing. He's like, I'm very drunk, I was in the army, I was there. And then there's this little plastic dinosaur pops up, and everyone pissing themselves off.
Yeah, it was like some Asian lad, wasn't it?
Some Asian lad in the back. It was hilarious. It was brilliant. It was absolute mayhem. He would have got
seen him. But again, he was quite sociable, Ollie Reed, and he was up for it. And then obviously he did the thing with Ned's Atomic Dustbin and all of that. You know, so it was just this idea. He would have preferred to have been in the bar before the show.
You filmed him in his dressing room tape.
Yeah, but it was all this effort, and to me it was a contrivance and it was a gimmick, and that to me never works. It shortens your shelf life. It was like the whole thing with the Hopefuls, and that ended up branding us trash TV, when in fact we only did it for half of series 4, half of series 5. I didn't object to it on moral grounds, but I just thought, it just means that there's certain bands and certain guests who wouldn't come on our show anymore because they go, well, why would we go on that show when all anyone's going to be talking about the next day is some bloke from Stoke-on-Trent who ate a worm sandwich?
Eating worms. Because that section was called I'd Do Anything to Get on TV,
yeah,
wasn't
the Hopefuls.
The Hopefuls,
and that was stolen by... So Paul Ross, who was our editor, Jonathan Ross's older brother at the time, he'd seen this programme on Canadian TV where they paid everyone $250 and you didn't know what you were going to do until you turned up. And that was more or less what we did. They didn't get paid or anything. But a lot of them would suggest, well, I'll do this or I'll do that. But after a while, it's like, God, so what? The worst thing is, I'm the only one who really objected to it. And I don't get associated with the music, even though I was there for 5 years. You know, Joe Wiley does, and she was there for a year and a half. I mean, I'll never forget that. You know, I was talking about the Britpop thing with Oasis before. They were chatting about that. They cut all my story out, and then they had Joe Wiley and Stevie Lamacq talking about how they were playing Columbia on Radio 1. I thought, you played it once. Yeah. Twice tops, because there was only 500. I said, if you'd have been playing it, it would have been easy for me to get them on, because I could have just said to our music booker, Radio 1 are hammering it.
Yeah.
My pressure wasn't to go, I've discovered these. It was to get them on the show, because everyone worked for my missus, and I needed to be able to go out and socialise in Manchester without going, sorry, I got everyone else on. I could get Marion on. I could get World of Twist on, but I couldn't get you on. Sorry about that.
What was Kurt Cobain like?
Well, I mean,
Did you get a chance to talk to
Yeah,
him?
I mean, I spoke to him very briefly, but that was just after rehearsal because he had that Captain America T-shirt on.
That's right.
And obviously, this is before Marvel had gone big. I used to love Marvel back in the day. I might do Wilm's old comic thing in a few
it's
weeks'
on,
time
isn't it? Yeah,
because
yeah,
I've got a load of comics. I need to get shot of them. It's a bit embarrassing at my age, to have them all from the 70s. Giving me age away there, aren't I? I stopped buying them in 1973 when they went up from 6p to 7p. A rip-off.
They're about 20 quid now,
Well,
comics, aren't
no,
they?
I don't know. Not the state mine are in. They've been sat on, read about 50 times by me and our Kev. But yeah, so it was, it's kind of one of those. It was, just different. It was a great time to have witnessed Manchester go from nothing to what it is. And you talk about the 90s, but I have never witnessed a scene ever, including the early days of house. And I used to go to the garage, when Graham Park used to DJ there upstairs, in Nottingham. I've never witnessed such an organic ground up scene as the Manchester thing coming through.
amazing.
I don't like calling it that because it was just Manchester, 88 and 89. And, so even the baggy clothes, most of the people you saw in the big flares and the really baggy hoodies were all the teenage girls.
It's stolen from Ivor.
It was their thing. It was their look to go out and get drunk and be kind of like Ledetzi. They'd still snog some lad or whatever, but it was almost like, do you know what I mean? They'd go out like an empowered thing for them.
They were just epic days, weren't they? Just great days.
Yeah. I mean, it was a certain moral looseness about Manchester that was reflected in that whole scene. The Stone Roses were probably late 20s at the time. Similar to me, but it was like they brought that punk ethic with them. It'd take them a long time to get there. They were very much the outliers and the outsiders. And because it was all that Thatcherism, they appealed to young kids. So their following was probably younger than the Happy Mondays following at the time. They're all 16, 17, 18. We're all into the Stone Roses and, kipping on park benches to go and see them in Europe, in Paris and all that. They followed them all around.
It was all centralised as well on Oldham Street and Whitworth Street, wasn't it?
Well, there were so many different clubs we used. So, if you think International 2, International 1 was big. The Roses almost did like a residency at the International 2, and that's what cracked them.
Yeah.
They were playing there every week because their manager basically owned it, Gareth Evans. It ended up, they were the band really who pushed it all through. The Happy Mondays have been getting great press for about 2 years without quite delivering. And Tony Wilson hated the Stone Roses because they were co-managed by his ex-wife, Lindsay Reid.
Oh, is that right?
In the early days.
Yeah.
And Howard Jones, who he'd sacked from the Hacienda.
Yeah.
So he wouldn't give them a gig, he'd slag them off. And for them to have gone so big without him, and then he called it that Manchester thing to get the Happy Mondays onto their coattails. So now people still think that it's the Hacienda and Factory who were at the centre of Manchester, when if I asked you, which bands did Factory Records sign in 1989?
Well, New Order was ages
They were already
before
there,
that.
yeah. So who were the bands that they signed in 1989 to reflect Manchester?
Sub?
No, they were on Rob's
M
Records
People?
later. No. Again, they were later, but M People was signed to London or someone like that. It was signed to a major label.
Bernard Sumner's...
No, so I'm going to tell you now. A pub folk rock band called To Hell with Burgundy. A busker called Rob Gray, known as a Little Big Band.
Yeah.
And then a classical roster. Joe Diddell and someone else.
And
that was it. They
was...
didn't sign 808 State. And then in 1990, they signed Northside. So they had nothing to do with what came through in 88, 89.
No.
Other than, the nude night. They had nothing to do with it. And yet they've managed to put themselves central. I'm not slagging that store. People went to the Hacienda. People would meet each other there. But it wasn't as central as they make out.
No, there was other places.
Even that Hacienda crowd. If you talk about the places that played house music in Manchester, I always think of the Gallery and places like that were playing it really before the Hacienda. And the first DJ to play house at the Hacienda was Ewan Clark. It wasn't Mike Pickering. No offence to Mike, but you know what I mean? It was kind of, and people like Greg Wilson had worked there, but there were other clubs, and as those clubs shut down, like the Gallery and Legends and all that, that crowd moved to the Hacienda.
Yeah. I just remember so many fond memories, but I remember Canal Bar. Do you remember Canal Bar?
Yeah.
And I remember Liam Gallagher coming in, and it was like Moses parting the waves.
Yeah.
It was epic. And Hacienda was good because you'd see Take That one night, little Mark Owen and a few of the rest of them.
Well, I remember
Mick
Mick Hucknall used to be in there a lot. And what was funny was Liam was getting slagged off because he turned up in the Hacienda one night with a minder.
Did he?
And they were going, who does he think he is? And I went, mate, I said, what would you say if it was Prince?
Yeah.
Well, that's different. I said, yeah, he sold more records this year than Prince.
That's true.
But the thing was because you wouldn't have seen Hucknall in there with a minder. But I mean, Hucknall was, he'd been around that much in Manchester. I think it was almost like it was normal to see Hucknall out.
He hit on my girlfriend at the time. Yeah, I went to the toilet.
that won't make her a member of a smaller select band of people in that era, will it?
I was going to say, I left her on her own and went to the toilet, came back, Mick Hucknall's there getting stuck in. I'm like, fair enough, it's Mick Hucknall, I'll just leave you guys to it and have an orange juice. It was in Athenaeum Bar, do you remember Athenaeum?
Oh, God, yeah, of course, yeah. We shouldn't have been hanging around in Athenaeum.
I was about 18.
Yeah, to Cheshire that.
Oh, well,
I want to move away from
that. That's very, very true. I didn't do a lot on Oldham Street, really. But there was a big scene on Oldham Street.
Well, I mean,
there?
it was all quite new,
I
mean, again, really at the height of Manchester, even Dry Bar was a Johnny Come Lately. I mean, it was supposed to be called Dry and Hungry, so the downstairs bit was dry, where you get a drink, and the upstairs was going to be a restaurant for when you were hungry. But because they never had the money to do the restaurant, they just called it Dry, and that became a trendy thing for the names of bars in Manchester. Give it one name, Trough. Dry,
Home,
Blue,
Home. Do you remember Home?
Yeah, so all of that was a thing that was almost came by accident from Dry Bar.
I just missed that Manchester now we're talking about. I just wish I could just go back for one night.
I mean, it was just so weird. I remember being in there with a big music producer, Johnny J. Did Urban Cookie Collective, did all the early hip hop stuff, MC Busby and all that. I mean, he's still big. His biggest record was Cotton Eye Joe, Rednecks Johnny.
Was it?
So he's from Cheetham Hill.
He'll have smashed that, won't he?
And no songwriter, is there? So it's all in the production.
There you go.
And we were at the bar in Dry, and I was saying, I'd just been in Kendall's, and what is it? I remember someone was telling me about Badly Drawn Boy, this new artist.
Oh, yeah.
And I'd been in Kendall's and I heard this record, and I thought, I bet you that's Badly Drawn Boy. Once around the block it was.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm in Dry Bar, talk to Johnny. I'm going, oh, God, yeah, this Badly Drawn Boy, have you heard him yet? I said, sounds really good. They're different. Guy next to me, Cagoule on, wasn't wearing the hat then. He had hair. He turned around and he went, I'm Badly Drawn Boy. I mean, what's the likelihood of that going, oh, right, shit, bloody hell.
He's a nice fella, isn't he?
But David, but it was just so... I mean, what are the chances of that? I had no idea who he was. I'd only just heard him that day, and I think it was Chris Joyce, who'd been in Simply Red, who was telling me about Badly Drawn Boy only the day before.
You see, I'd met him at Granada Television when I was on Corrie, and he didn't know me, but I knew him because I'm into my music. And he gave me his phone number on a CD, and he said, give us a Corrie tour. And that never happened, but flip forward many years, and I was doing this reality show with Bruce Jones, who plays Les Battersby.
Yeah, I know Bruce.
Yeah, I know, we all know Bruce. So that's always the reaction we get with Bruce, isn't it? Every time.
I'll tell you about a great conversation I had with him was when I thought,
so
bonkers.
We were in Milan airport flying back from doing celebrity coach trip, right? It's not my finest hour. And Damien walks in. I'm like, Damien, come over. And he's been doing a gig, and we just got wasted. It was epic. I think Bruce probably fell asleep, missed a plane. I can't remember. And then I shared a cab back. So I went to Chorley. It's where Chorley lived in Chorley.
Cholton.
So I got a cab there and cab all the way back. He still owes me like 50 quid. Do you know what I mean? I was spewing at the time.
I'm sure he's done all right money-wise
I think
now.
he's all right money-wise.
Well, what was funny again with The Word, I interviewed him, and he said that he used to watch it with his brother, who sadly passed on a few years ago, and he said that what made him want to be a musician was he was age 14, watching The Word, and he saw the John Spencer Blues Explosion on it, who were one of those bands we would book that no one else would have booked at the time.
Yeah.
But we just thought, you know what, this might give people a bit of fun. Something a bit.
I do remember
wow,
them. Yeah,
never going to be a big hit.
Yeah.
But was like, wow, Friday night, this lot.
Tell us your Bruce Jones story.
Oh, Bruce. Well, I remember like seeing him in what was the pub that Vera Duckworth owned?
The Grapes.
The Grapes.
We
So I was
all
in
used
there.
to go in.
I was chatting to him, and he's a City fan, so we were on United City. And I was saying, I said the thing is, I said with City now, I said they've not really got any. I said the only player you've got that anyone else might even want is probably Joey Barton. And he said, I remember him as a kid, playing Wally up against the end of the terraced house there in Colliers. I said, he's a Scouser.
I
He
know.
went,
Oh my God.
no, I remember him as a kid in Colliers.
I know. Oh my God.
He's just somehow getting that Scouse accent.
Yeah.
Growing up in Colliers.
Oh well. You know what?
His
That's
behaviour
Bruce.
wouldn't have even gone down that well in Colliers, would it, Joey Barton? Thinking about it. But I was just going, right, mate, okay. In a parallel universe.
That is just such a typical. One of my favourite Bruce stories is you telling me. He said, I was working as a milkman when the Yorkshire Ripper was around, and I discovered the body, and I looked up, and over the edge there was a man with a black beard, and it was the Yorkshire Ripper. Well, it wasn't. It wasn't, was it? Though. I mean, yes, he did see the body, yes, but that story is exaggerated a lot. So, like that story, if you ask Bruce, if you say something about anything, Bruce has always been there.
But Joey Barton.
Joey Barton is a Scouser.
As a kid in Colliers.
Joey Barton.
In his short trousers, playing Wally.
He would have never heard of even Manchester back then, would he? Do you know what I mean? That's hilarious.
I remember working at Butlins in Bognor Regis when I was 19 with a mate of mine.
Me too.
Hey, squeegeeing floors.
Yeah.
We weren't doing anything glamorous.
I was doing a PA and getting paid $2,000.
Right. Well, exactly. We were getting 29 quid a week. That was like being in prison. But it was like, I remember the Scouts, loads of Scousers there, but they all took those jobs because they had court cases coming up and they didn't want to get sent down again, and having a job might keep you out of Borstal or reform school. And we had this lad from Seaforth called Donny, and we were having it, and he ended up having to hang around with the Manx for a few days. But they're like wildebeest, aren't they, the Scousers? They'll find their herd eventually. And so we had to hang around with me and this mate of mine, and we were chatting about this, that, and the other, and he was going, he said, Liverpool's big. I said, Manchester's a much bigger city than Liverpool. He goes, is it? He went, Stoke's bigger than Manchester. He said, how is Stoke bigger? He said, I've been there, because he used to follow Liverpool all the way. He said, I've been there, it's bigger than Manchester. I'm going, insanity.
Right, this is a very important question. Who's your favourite band?
I mean, I suppose for me, the best band I've ever seen in my life, and the one that I will still listen to a lot now, is Bob Marley and the Wailers.
No, I would never have thought that about you.
Well, I mean, I was always a huge reggae fan, and then you think about Marley for every mood. Up, down, bit rebellious, bit sunny, sunshiny day. He's got... I mean, I think he's almost like semi-religious. I remember going to see him I went to see the two best live gigs I've ever seen in my life, and they were both in 1978 and involved a coach trip, and we went to Bingley Hall, Stafford, and one was Earth, Wind and Fire, doing the I Am album, with all the big hits on, September and all that, and they were on the whatchamacallit, like the pyramid. They built the pyramid there, and all the phoenix horns were on the steps of the pyramid, and that was heaving. And then Bob Marley played that, and I'll never forget being at the Marley concert, and like Steel Pulse was supporting him. We'd seen them a couple of times already in Manchester, and I looked behind me, I thought, God, the place looks a third empty. It held about 8,000 people. It was like a big cattle shed. And then you felt the crush to the front. And that's why it looked a third empty, because I'd looked behind before the wave had hit me.
Yeah.
So he went like that. And then he came on, he did Natural Mystic. And you just felt every hair on the back of your neck go up. I've still got them now. And it's kind of, and that lasted throughout the whole gig. It was like a religious experience. And there's no way any other gig has come anywhere
ever compete
near
with that.
and it can't. But even his albums, when you listen to his albums, even his more political ones like Survival and that, or the one that he did with Peter Tosh and Bunny Wailer as the Wailers, Burning, just amazing. And
so
just the
many good
lyrics,
songs,
just everything, the feel, the vibe, even a song like Small Axe. If You Are the Big Tree, We Had a Small Axe. That was about the corruption in the Jamaican reggae industry, where I think it was Desmond Decker, Jimmy Cliff, and Toots Hibbert, or it might have been John Holt, had set up a label called Big Three, the Big Three, and they were buying all the airtime for their records on the. So obviously in Jamaican, Big Three is Big Tree.
Yeah.
If you had a big tree, we had a small axe coming to cut you down.
Yeah.
And obviously Bob Marley and Peter, they became bigger than Jimmy Cliff or Desmond Decker or John Holt or Toots Hibbert.
Yeah.
They took over.
Redemption song for me.
Amazing again.
Redemption song for me all day. They play a laid-back version at the end of the Will Smith film, I Am Legend.
Oh, yeah, because he's always listening to
That's right, he's always listening to Bob Marley in the film, isn't he? Just gives me goosebumps.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, so probably Marley, Manchester bands. It's a tricky one because I know who's good. It will always be the Smiths.
Yeah.
And that's another weird one, a bit like the Badly Drawn Boy. I met Johnny Marr, I used to chat to him, about whatever who was around in the Manchester music scene at the time, what gigs were on and all the rest of it. When I heard that Smith single, and that was May 1983, Hand in Glove, immediately I thought, that'll be him. Because we were both moaning about that new romantic scene and the fact that it wasn't exciting to watch, and you were waiting for guitar bands to come back in. And Orange Juice, you thought would do it, but they never quite did it. From Scotland. Then of course you had people like Aztec Camera and all that. But it was
Roddy Frey.
But it was really the Smiths who blew them all away. And then the Pale Fountains from Liverpool could have been it, but they got delayed by a couple of years, and in which time the Smiths came through.
Yeah.
And so probably the Smiths. I still think best live band from Manchester would be James.
Oh, I saw James last year. They were supporting Catfish and the Bottlemen at Heaton Park.
Support? Oh, you mean on the bill with them?
On the bill. No, they were supporting.
Were they?
Yeah, they were just getting a little bit of extra till, weren't they? But he was on crutches. Tim. He was on crutches. So it wasn't quite the same, because what's good live about James is Tim.
Oh, he
just goes mental. He's just dancing and sit down. He's dancing. And so I took my daughter, and that was a great gig. But
you see, they were always good live, James, and they were the ones who invented the gig as an event.
Yeah.
Which is what the Mondays and the Stone Roses then later did, and that became part of that Manchester thing, that happening vibe, because there was a time when James couldn't pull 30 people outside of Manchester, but they'd fill the Free Trade Hall, with 1,500 people and what have you.
Yeah.
And so that made them special, but also they just kept releasing album after album after album. So you didn't appreciate how good they were, because, especially working on the radio, you haven't got time to cozy up with an album properly. So you give it a cursory listen, think, oh, that's a good track. And if it doesn't jump out with you, you don't. And it's only when you sit down you get into them. A bit like The Fall. Once you get into The Fall, you think, wow, this is great. But they churn them out. And it's that work ethic again.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so it's hard, with favourite bands. First band, the Beatles, like everyone my generation.
You have to discount the Beatles because it's everyone's first favourite band,
it's just but it's just one of those things as a kid, it's something instinctive. So from the age of 3, I loved the Beatles. I felt really upset when they split up when I was like 9 or 10. And then my oldest lad is 28 now. Because all kids love music. So I used to watch Top of the Pops with him. It's still on. So we like the Cheeky Girls. And you like Girls Aloud, Sound of the Underground. Yeah. Well, they like anything at that age. Then we watched it one week. And he was only like 4. And he went, Dad, he said, and the really polite kids, aren't they? He said, Dad, he said, all this music on Top of the Pops is all right, isn't it? And I said, yeah. He went, But really, it's all rubbish compared to Eminem. And I thought, you're right.
You're right.
And so it was
4 years old.
without me. There'll be no controversy. And he learned every lyric of that off by heart. So he'd be there and he'd be rapping it to me. And I mean, we never had the rate. Where was he hearing it to learn it all off by heart?
My daughter's the same. Yeah,
no, but this is like 2000 and what year was it? 2002, 2003.
Eminem was late 90s.
No, without me, because he was born in 98, my lad. So it's without me, you know, that
that era.
Without me, there'd be no... And he was going, nobody listens to techno no more, you know, Moby. And I said, who's Moby? He said, I don't know. I said, what's techno? He went, I don't know. But he knew all the lyrics. But in a way that it's that instinctive thing, you know, music, if it's got to hit you at that level, that subatomic level. What is it? You know, I mean, I remember like someone saying that his lad said to me, said, Dad, where does the music go when the song stopped?
Whoa. Ooh, that's deep.
Yeah, but it is, everything about music is kind of deep, isn't it?
Well, you hear people saying that music saved their lives.
Well, yeah, but also music kills people too. I knew that from managing that reggae band.
Sure.
But because it's like it's a burning obsession with the people who write songs and do it.
How do you mean kill themselves? You mean...
Well, because the guy, when I managed this reggae band and I got him a deal, but in those days the levels of racism in the music industry were off the scale. And so you were never going to get a good deal for black guys. And the guy who was our lead singer and songwriter had been around for quite a while. Errol Cowell, Junior C. But his voice was amazing. It was like Dennis Brown. He had such a... If he'd have sung soul or something like that, he could have made a fortune. But because he chose reggae and that roots sound, just never got the recognition. So even by the time they got signed, he would have been about 32, 33. And then they never put the investment in. The junior A&R man who signed us to the Cool Tempo label is the same guy who went on to sign later on Amy Winehouse and is now the CEO of Warner Chappell Publishing worldwide, a bloke called Guy Moot. Now, he signed Junior C. We got offered before our second single. The first single got C-listed on Radio 1 and Capital. Before our second single, we got offered the UB40 support tour for the UK and Ireland, which meant Barrowlands, Glasgow, Birmingham, NEC, Wembley, Dublin, all of that. Massive. £10,000 buy-on. And they wouldn't pay for it. That was nothing. And we'd have been a 12-piece band with a 4-piece horn section supporting UB40. We'd have gone down great with their crowd.
Absolutely.
That would have made us and we'd have got reviewed.
Yeah.
What really annoyed me was I bumped into Kevin Godley.
Yeah.
Out of 10cc. And he was then starting to do videos and stuff. And my big irritation, we'd signed to Cool Tempo, part of Chrysalis, and I was chatting to him about that. And he said, when we did the video for Go West, and I hated that song, you know, I Won't Close My Eyes. He said, they gave us 12,000 quid just to get the guys' teeth straightened so they look good in the video.
That is wild, isn't it?
You know?
That is wild.
And yet you've got a 12-piece band who've already been C-listed on Radio 1. I've done a live session on Saturday Live, and I've done it all off their own bat. And because I was doing stuff for Saturday Live on Radio 1, I got them. He did nothing. Chrysalis did nothing. I did it all.
Yeah.
And it was like they wouldn't even give him 10 grand. And that sums up the music industry to me then, and even to a degree, you know, it'll still be there.
It's I'll just say it now. TV, film, music industry, inherently corrupt. Awful. People lose their lives because of it, because of being shafted or lied to or ripped off. The disappointment involved.
I know. Also, it's like, cause it's not about talent ultimately.
Talent.
It's more about fit than merit. I mean, I knew that when I won those Sony Radio Awards. So it's virtually 40 years to the day exactly, April 28th, 1986, when I won my second one. I was 25. I was the first person to ever win 2 National Sony Awards. I was the youngest person the year before to ever win one. I won it the day after United beat Everton in the 1985 FA Cup final. Norman Whiteside. Norman Whiteside on the Saturday, me on the Sunday.
Sony Awards.
On stage at the Grosvenor House Hotel.
Been there, yeah.
But it was like... So that was a massive thing. Now, if you did that now at my age, you'd be straight on like Radio 1, you'd be everywhere. But in those days, a northern accent, it was like, ooh.
Well, Adam Cole won one, didn't he?
That would have been much later. But he didn't have the obvious northern accent, did he? I know Pete Mitchell and Jeff won one for their show. Yeah. But that was via my ex-missus, because the show that they put in for that was she got them George Michael.
Oh, wow.
She got them George Michael, and then they had Caroline Aherne to ring in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Wow. You know, on George Michael as Mrs. Merton.
That's right, yeah.
And George Michael, that was the first interview he'd done in 7 years, but he was fantastic. But what really annoyed my ex-missus was she was 7 months pregnant with my lad, you know, the Eminem fan. And her and a business partner, Alison, they went to Machinair for lunch with George, and you know, before they took him in for Pete and Jeff's show. And she was pissed off because she had like her biggest bump, you know what I mean? And then when they went outside, it's a bit like, you know, the Beatles on the roof. There's about 400 people outside.
Oh, as soon as one
because
person twigs,
word had got round that George Michael was in there, and it's kind of because it'd been a while since he'd had a hit, you know, maybe three years or whatever. And then, you know, they brought him in, and it was a great interview. In fact, they asked him what his favourite band was, the Smiths. His second favourite band, New Order.
No way.
And then him and Pete were having, and Pete was saying, no, New Order better than the Smiths. And George Michael was saying, no.
Got a claim to fame, me, Terry.
What?
Celebrity Stars in the Rise, George Michael.
Oh, did you go on as that?
I did, yeah.
My voice wouldn't hold a tune if it had handles. I'd have no chance with any of that.
And then I met George. I got invited several years later to one of his last concerts. And
right.
There was some people from Corrie there. I'd not been in it for years, and I'm just stood at the back, and they're all, you know, kissing his arse and doing what they're doing. And then he looked over and he went, "Come here. Where do I know you from?" And I went, "I've done you, George." And he went, "Done me? What do you mean, done me?" And I went, "I've done you." And he went, "Done me?" I went, "Celebrity Stars in the Rise." He went, "Oh, thank fuck."
Quite funny.
Yeah. Yeah, and then he was Rowetta was with me as well. She was being quite, you know, overbearing that night.
I can imagine.
Rowetta said,
what, that night?
Well, Rowetta's every night, isn't she? But she was very drunk, and we ended up getting a picture, and we were the only people to get a picture. No one else was allowed. He said, "Come on, I'll give you a picture. It's fine." So that was good. And then
but I mean, he's just such a lovely bloke.
Oh, he was so nice.
I've never met him. I've just never heard a bad word about him.
He was so nice. What I noticed about him, though, it was only a few years before he died, and he just seemed very vulnerable. He actually seemed nervous, and he'd just been on stage.
But that's part of the art thing, isn't it? It's that vulnerability, that rawness, that sensitivity, you know. I'm
so like, I hate using the word honoured, but it was an honour to meet him.
Yeah.
Really,
I mean,
big honour.
Listen, when the weirdest thing, I mean, you know, the bigger they are, the less affected they are. I mean, I remember interviewing Robin Williams. It was like my first ever interview for The Word, May 1990, and I actually thought, well, I better tell him it's my first ever interview. Fantastic with me, just brilliant all the way through. You know what I mean? And
he was brilliant,
just amazing. You know
I
what I
used
mean?
to love his stories on cocaine. He said stuff about why would you? It made sense to take a drug which give you hypersexuality, made you impotent all within an hour. It was brilliant. It was just brilliant. He was a great guy, wasn't he?
Well, with me, because obviously I was interviewing him in San Francisco, and that was the first time I'd ever been to the States in my life, and it was like May Bank Holiday weekend, basically. You know, sort of May the 3rd or something, and I remember like interviewing him, and he'd been in this film, a not very good film, with Tim Robbins, and I knew he'd grown up in San Francisco, so I said, "Were you a bit of a hippie?" And then he talked about going, not really, but he had been to see Janis Joplin, and he'd been to see, you know, all these great gigs, and then jokingly I said, "Has there ever been a generation as uncolour coordinated?" It's like hippies. And then he went into this big thing where, you know, like he said, "Oh man, that's really good." And then he did like a makeover on me, and I had like this Seconds denim shirt on, and you know, like sort of a bit of a floppy haircut with the the thingy, you know, shaved up, short, and he went, yeah, let's do a makeover on you first. We'll take you out of that San Quentin prison shirt, you know, and then we'll do something about this Black and Decker haircut. You know,
He was
and all
like
that
the
kind of
dream
stuff.
guest, wasn't he?
Well, yeah, so he's just brilliant, you know, and that was my very first interview for The Word, was Robin Williams.
Do you think he had ADHD?
Absolutely, everybody's had it now.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually do think it's so prevalent, and I think it ties up with certain, you know, like I've been doing stand-up comedy now, but never concentrating properly, even though it's good when I do it, because obviously
Well,
I'm
yeah,
off my head.
talk to us about that then. Because we
So,
mentioned
well,
it before.
first of all, it was like I got asked in about 2011 by John Locke, you know, who used to run the Northern.
I'm a friends
and all
with
that.
John, yeah,
Right,
yeah,
so
yeah.
John had taken over the Laugh In with Jason Manford in Chester. And so he said, would you come and do a kind of an evening with, you know, where I just go there and people ask me questions. And I said, yeah, I'll do it. But I always thought I would like to do it stand-up style. So I remember I prepared about 45 minutes worth of stuff. And then I was really nervous because I thought, I'm going to be putting myself on edge here.
My worst nightmare.
On the edge. So I did drink a fair bit before I went on. And I remember like Kermit was there out of, you know...
Black Grey.
Yeah. Ruthless Rap Assassins, I knew him from, you know, from before that, Kermit. And even when he was in Broken Glass. Because his girlfriend at the time was from Chester. So he was there, the very front row. And I went on and I remember like being really nervous. And our Kev sent me a text message and went, right, good luck tonight. He said, but remember, Fabrice Mwanda died for 7 minutes, but he's all right now. You know, the Bolton Wanderers player. That had only just happened.
Oh, God.
So I just, so as soon as I went on, I said, look, I've never done this before. I read that out.
You didn't, did you?
So right, I'll have to get right away.
Did you get a laugh?
Yeah, of course you do.
All right,
I mean,
good,
it's
good,
not,
good.
You know,
good,
it's just
good.
going. Yeah,
Good.
Because
We're
it's
all
about
right
me
then.
dying.
We're all right.
You know
We're
what I
all
mean?
right. We're
It's
all
like,
right.
you know, so our Kev's taking a piss out of me being scared of dying. So it went really well. I did about an hour and 35 minutes. Wow. And I'll never forget, like, Kermit one bit when I was chatting about, you know, sort of throwing stones at the black kids on our street when I was like 4. And he used to go, yeah, man, that used to happen. That used to happen. You know, like that. Brilliant. And then after that, pared it down. But you don't see yourself as certain things. And then what I did was I decided to Edinburgh a couple of years ago and revive the show that I did do, which was then called Naked Confessions of a Recovering Catholic, as Confessions of an Irish Catholic. So I did it in Edinburgh the year before last, and then last year, and I did an 8-night run, sold it out. And it's weird, when you're doing it every night, you get so much better.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, you'll know that being an actor. But
well, I'm a
obviously-
musician as well, so if I don't gig for a bit, I get anxious, and I've been doing it thousands of times, playing guitar, playing piano, singing.
But again, because I have to arrange everything myself, because I've got that rejection sensitivity as well, which is part of your ADHD thing. Where if I ring up an agent, they go, "Oh no, our books are full at the moment," I take it as like going, "You're useless."
Yeah, I do.
Right, no.
I feel like it's all about me.
I mean, you know, being that poor kid, I used to dread school trips. You know, when I was at primary school, but there was only 2 that I never got allowed to go on. And one of them, because it cost 7 and 6 to go to Chester Zoo, 37.5p. But when they used to give you the letter to take home, I used to have that knot in my stomach of handing it over to my mum.
Is that part of ADHD?
It's that rejection sensitivity. You know, like when people say, if you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah.
And so kind of, I think, you know, maybe middle-class kids, but then even working-class kids like Chris Evans, because he was an only child, they've got sharper elbows.
Yeah.
A bit more self-belief, whereas, although he could be ADHD, I don't know. I just remember on our street there was a myth going round that when the ice cream man came round, if you queued up and you could ask him if you got any broken wafers or broken lollies, then you might get a free broken lolly. And it never, ever happened. And I put in one of my books, I said, by the time I was 8, I realised that it's not so much you don't ask, you don't get. You don't ask, at least you save your breath and your dignity.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I feel as well.
But it is bad because, you know, I mean, you know, obviously if you work in the media, you're swimming in an ocean of rejection.
Yeah,
And yet
totally.
my path was I end up by accident and then I get off of my own radio show on Radio Derby, then I go to Key 103, then I end up on... I've never had a job that I've applied for.
I was going to say, you didn't have to ask.
I've never had the ones that I have applied for, I've not even got.
Yeah. I mean, I've just had a life of constant rejection being an actor. It's just been, do you know what I mean? Getting to the last two and you've been down to London 5 times in a row and it's cost you 500 quid and you're in your mid-20s and you can't afford it. And it is a life of pure rejection.
Well, I mean, my frustrations were like, I remember Under the Moon with Danny Kelly, you know, the football show on Channel 4.
Yes, I do, yeah.
So that was made by a production company called Zigzag. So I think, I can't remember, the guy was Danny Cohen, something like that, who ran it. Or is that maybe he's
I know
something
Zigzag
else.
though, yeah.
Yeah, Zigzag. So he was a massive Arsenal fan. And so I had a long meeting with him and his, you know, main guy. And we had a good laugh. So we were chatting about football and blah, blah, blah. So he wanted me to present this show and it made sense. It was only like a year and a half after the Word had finished. He went in to see the big guy at Channel 4 about me. And this guy was called Stephen Keane. And he'd worked for The Guardian. He'd been in the States for about 3 or 4 years. And he'd just come back. And he literally said, I don't see Terry Christian as a football person. Now, I've been going to Old Trafford since 1968-69 season. I've grown up... I'm Man United. And he's already interviewed me, the guy who's making the show, for an hour and a half. Because he didn't want to be accused of hiring a fake.
Yeah.
So, just like that. And that's how you lose jobs in this country. It's just like... The guy hadn't even met me in his life, never spoken to me. It's like that. And the same when you put documentary ideas in, I don't see Terry as a BBC 4 sort of person. Well, have you met me? No. What are you going off?
It's just terrible.
Bad press by Piers Morgan. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Who hated me, and I hated him.
Yeah, well, everyone hates Piers Morgan.
Well, I mean,
they?
I describe Piers Morgan as someone who literally exists halfway between a snare and an arslick. Perfect.
I got my phone hacked, so I'm not even going to slander myself in any way, but, you know, Piers Morgan and the phone hacking stuff, I've never understood why so many people were involved in that, and he wasn't when he was the boss, but who knows? Who knows?
I mean, it's a strange one because the Sun just paid everyone out, but then destroyed all the evidence.
Yeah.
You know, so they paid out on a class action.
Yes.
So no one would go any further. The Mirror didn't.
No, I missed that by time.
So I think you had to lawyer up and find evidence with the Mirror.
Did you get a payout?
I'm saying nothing. You know.
We keep having guests in who got paid out. So.
Well, I mean, class actions are quite good.
Yeah.
You know, and because I imagine that there were people who got payouts who didn't even have phones to hack.
I remember like being in the studio and like opening my Nokia flip phone and then it'd ring and I'd open it and then it'd be clicking. I actually remember that. So I remember them hacking my phone, but you know, who knows what stories they got. Yeah. I don't really know, but I was so open-mouthed at the time, I probably just would have told them anyway.
Well, I mean, there was a lot. So if you think about it, a lot of the big phone hacking payouts and the class actions started in the north by a little company in Wakefield.
Yeah.
McElhinney's.
Yeah.
Oh, why did they do you?
Me and the private investigators.
No, I mean for the class action.
Oh, sorry, the lawyers.
Yeah.
No, my lawyers were down in London.
Right. So
but it was only recently.
Well, McElhinney's did loads of them back in the day, and but that started off because my niece who worked for them, she'd represented Michael Barrymore, you know, for his wrongful arrest thing. And although, you know, the police got off with that without having to pay him much. What was evident was that there'd been loads of phone hacking. His phone had been hacked, and so that's where they dug quite a bit of money for Michael Barrymore from. But that was my niece. That was our Mary's eldest.
Wow.
Hey, we're like lawyers to the stars in our family.
Say, Jesus, you're well connected, Terry.
My oldest lad did somebody's traffic case recently.
Really?
The only one he lost. I'm not going to say who.
Yeah. Oh, that you can tell us afterwards.
I will.
What's important now is to talk about your main passion in life, which is not your kids and anything. It's just football, isn't it?
Well, no, I mean, I've always loved United, although it's
Yeah.
not as much fun to go. But I do like making my little predictions.
Okay,
You know,
so
before the game, so I do that. You know,
So
United I've always loved. So I wrote a book about being a United fan back in. Well, it was published the day. I remember doing an interview on Johnny Walker's show, you know, on Radio
Yeah, of
2
course, yeah.
about the book, and I'd done Ian Payne that day on 5 Live and all that, and then rushing to meet a mate of mine in the Goat in Boots pub in Fulham.
the Goat in Boots pub.
It, you know, like I think it's a chain thing, one of the
Brilliant.
Golden Boots on the on Fulham to watch Juventus versus United
Yeah.
semi-final, second leg. Amazing, and that was it. So the book was Reds in the Hood, but it's about Man United between me first going there.
Which date was that?
So that's 68, and then us.
Jesus, you were 8 years old when you first went.
But just after we'd won the European Cup.
Yeah.
So, and up until when we won our first trophy after that, which was against Liverpool in '77.
Yeah.
But it's also about growing up in Old Trafford and being Irish descent. And so the weird thing is, the book I wanted to write about was growing up in that working class inner city Manchester background of being Irish descent. But there's no money in that.
Yeah.
You whack United in, you get an advance.
Well, hence the reason we're talking about it now as well. Because it's speaking about any football team is always helpful, isn't it? And
But United, it meant so much to people. That's why I really disliked Amorim. I was hammering him out within about 2 months. Ten Hag, I thought, wasn't much better than Amorim because he stuck to a system. He never changed it to win a game, except for that one time against Liverpool, 2-1 down, and we came back to win it 4-3. It's the only time he put an extra attacker on. He brought Anthony and Ahmad on, you know, and that's because it was a cup tie. I mean, Amorim didn't even do that in a cup final, did he?
No.
You know, which is like just crazy. Why wouldn't you do it? 5 minutes to go, 10 minutes to go, stick everyone up front.
Yeah.
Then I hated the Mourinho era. That is the worst football I have ever seen
Why?
at Old Trafford. Well, because it was just joyless. It was negative. It was dull. It was all about him. It was just awful to watch. And no excuses to play like that. Given the size of the squad he had, because he'd inherited a strongish squad, then he spent a lot of money improving it, and to play the worst football I have ever seen. I think it was worse than anything Moyes played. It was worse than what Van Gaal played. It was even worse than Ten Hag and Amorim. And everyone goes, yeah, but he won 2 trophies. I was just ashamed to see us win any of them. He had Paul Pogba playing as a centre-half.
Yeah.
You know, that gutless game against Sevilla when we got knocked out. And then even, I think we were playing away once in the Cup against Chelsea, and he knocked us out 2-1, and he did nothing. He knew that if he went for it and we ended up losing 5-1 or 6-1, he was in danger of getting a sack. Whereas if he held on and lost 2-1, it was all about him. He was just the worst fit for any United manager. I just didn't want to see that. That isn't the football I wanted to see as a United fan. You know, I wanted to see the way Doherty played, the way Matt Busby played, even under Wilf McGuinness, Ferguson, even Frank O'Farrell, you know. And again, none of these managers were really backed very well.
Why do you think that after 2013 Ferguson left? Why do you think they went so completely tits?
I think Gill left, and you could already see the money not being there. You know, from when they sold.
Well, so it's a money thing then.
Well, yeah. So when they sold Ronaldo for 80 million, we bought Gabriel Obertan for 3.5.
Yeah.
Valencia for 10, and then Michael Owen on a free, and that was it, wasn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Or Zoran Tosic for 3.5, but then we made a profit on him because we sold him a year later for 8.5, and then we bought that main Biram Jew for about 1 million, but then we sold him for 2.5.
They were wild signings then, weren't they?
But it was like, it was all about, and then even before that, we weren't buying the players we should have been buying. You know, we could have bought David Silva for 23 million. We didn't. You know, we needed to replace players like Scholes. So really, I think, you know, Ferguson's greatest achievement was to win the league in that 2012-13 season.
Oh God, yeah,
because
we
were running length.
It was a miracle.
Well, we had so many injuries. You know, and a lot of it was just having Carrick there, and sometimes Scholes to just ping that ball up quickly, get it up early to like Van Persie and Rooney, who had a good enough first touch to get it, shoot, score, get it, player 1-2, or give it to the other player, and then he'd score. You know, and we did that. We didn't really dominate games, but that's how I like to see United play. Get the ball forward early. These people are still banging on about Amorim now. I'm going, he's terrible.
Terrible.
But I mean, I gave him up until February the 5th of 2025, when I think it was Dorgu's first game. We lost 2-0 against Crystal Palace at home, and I thought, this guy's got to go.
Yeah.
We are not going to get any better. Our Tony has been going to United since 1962. He went, after about 3 games, he said, he's no good, this bloke. Because we'd had a bit of a bounce under Ruud van Nistelrooy. You know, remember that great game when we had that front line of Rashford, Xerxes and Ahmad against Everton, and we won 4-2 and we looked really good. And, you know, we still had our problems, you know, in the midfield, but we looked really good. And then he came and there was zero bounce and it was all so negative. And, you know, 3 centre-halves getting in each other's way, no out ball, everyone getting marked. And, just awful. I
asked Martin Edwards when he came on, I said, because this was going back several months, and I said, if Michael Carrick wins every game to the end of the season, are they definitely going to sack him? Do you know what I mean? You can't. He's doing well. Do you know what I mean? He's done really well.
It's hard because obviously he got a reputation at Middlesbrough towards the end of being a bit unadventurous and cautious. But then the way the Premier League is at the moment, it's become so much about big physical players. So a skillful player, you know, can be closed down, can be nullified. You know, the ones that are skillful and small just get pushed now. I mean, how many penalties and free kicks has Ahmad been not given this season?
Yeah.
Just for being a bit slight.
Yeah.
You know, and you go, you know, blatant penalties, really. And Mbumo gets a bit of that, although, you know, for me, again, I don't know if these guys are the answer. You know, they're keen. But, you know, so there's that. And I think the game's changed in that way. So really, there's not much between teams. And it's all about who gets the first goal often now. If you get the first goal, then you've got a chance of winning. If you ship the first goal, you know, it's hard.
Do you think football's become boring?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think, you know, if you look at it, it's about big, physical, quick players. You know, you haven't got that. You know, because even in the 70s, when, you know, really good players would get kicked a lot, I mean, kicked badly. Yeah. I mean, you think about those players now on the pitches they've got now. You know,
I know. Yeah.
Because the fitness would be like, all right, less booze. You know what I mean? Yeah. They'd just be stopped from doing it. But then you think, what's the rewards? Oh, I was on 100 quid a week. Now I get 100,000 a week. Yes, I'll stay fit.
Yeah.
That's my motivation. You don't want me to drink beer during the season? I won't bother. You know?
No, it's much more professional. But, you know, back in the 90s as well, even they were all
but what I always noticed, even the 60s, the 70s, those players, they all naturally were decent with either foot. They all had a great first touch. There wasn't, you know, the ball didn't hit them and go spinning off, even on bad pitches and heavy and wet balls.
How do you think a 70s player would play with the better pitches, the lighter balls, the better boots?
United would have won the league.
Would George Best run rings around everyone?
Yeah. United would have won the league under Doherty in 76. It's kind of, you know, if you think about how bad the pitches were.
Awful.
So if you think about that Doherty side, the one that, you know, that got promoted from Division 2, they're all tiny.
Yeah.
You know, they're all like 5'6", 5'7", and, you know, 9 stone ringing wet. You know, players like Jerry Daly and so their results were great early season and great the back end of the season, but we dropped points in that winter period and the pitches were heavy. You know, and that stopped us being able to play football in a way. You know,
just as simple as that, really. Yeah.
I mean, even when we were even when we got relegated. I mean, after Christmas that year, when we got relegated, the football was fantastic. It was just that we had no one to put the ball in the back of the net because I think Brian Kidd was injured, Dennis Law had been let go, we'd sold Ted McDougall. You know, there was just nobody up front.
Yeah.
We didn't have a single out-and-out striker. We had Lou Macari, but he didn't want to be a striker. He was more of a, like, number 10 attacking midfielder.
Yeah.
And so it was just weird.
Favourite Man United player ever?
Well, George Best, but... You know,
take George out. Second favourite.
Oh, God, it's so hard.
Modern era.
Probably Rooney,
Oh, yeah.
Scholes,
Yeah.
Rooney.
Workhorses, especially Scholes.
He wasn't a workhorse. He was fantastic.
Skulls was great.
Well, no, his work rate. You know, his work rate. He
No,
was,
no, it was just his genius.
His genius, yeah.
His genius. I mean, no, if you're looking at work, I mean, look, work rate would be your kind of your Brian Robsons, your Roy Keanes, you know, even David Beckham was someone who really, I mean, they all worked really in that doc. Fergie wasn't going to have you in the side if you didn't work, but in terms of having that something extra special, you know, I mean, I love Ronaldo as well, but yes, Scholes, just something else. And I never thought he'd make it because he started off as a striker, didn't he?
Yeah.
And I remember seeing him. Away, funny enough, I went to United with Danny Bear and her best mate Mazzy, all dressed up to the nines, and we're in the United end at oh God, what's it called now? You know, QPR's ground, Loftus Road, like a little wooden stadium. It rattled, didn't it? When everyone was, you could feel it shaking like that. And they went a goal up, and United played well for the last 10 minutes of the first half and the first 10 minutes of the second half. And we scored 3 goals in that period. And Scholes was starting as the striker up front, along with Cantona. And he got 2. But you just looked at him, you thought, well, you've got no pace, you've got no power. How are you going to make it as a striker?
Yeah, yeah.
So really, when he dropped, and then you just looked at him, you thought, this kid's
genius,
fantastic.
What was your favourite era?
I mean, I loved that season in Division 2.
Did you?
Yeah, I loved it because it was just so exciting. I mean, it was like, because I hadn't seen us winning every game before, and just the atmosphere was just, because it was almost like the crowd willed them.
The hope.
And actually, with everything that happened that season, with the injuries and everything else, you would, if someone had told you beforehand that you'd get promoted, you'd go, no chance. You know, so it was like, yeah, just weird.
Yeah.
You know, to lose Jim Holton with a broken leg, then Jerry Daly, his form went, you know, Willie Morgan leaving, falling out with Tommy Docherty.
Well, there's a story.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I mean, because the thing is, it was like, he was probably our best player, Willie Morgan, at the time. And then
available and all good.
Yeah, but then buying Steve Coppell for 40,000 from Tranmere Rovers, and I'll never forget his debut, because I think he came on for, it might have been Jerry Daly, but it was like, he came on, it was 0-0 at half time against Cardiff City. Coppell came on for the second half at half time. We won 4-0.
Yeah.
But he had that way like Beckham of putting a ball in Coppell. And I mean, really, we bought no one in that era. We bought Stuart Pearson. He got us promoted, but he was injured for half the season because we only got relegated because we had no striker.
Yeah.
And then when we came up, our only signing pre-season was Tommy Jackson on a free from Nottingham Forest. You know, a midfield player. And then we bought Gordon Hill a little bit later on. For like 70,000 off Millwall, because they'd been relegated to the old Division 3. And then the following season, 76, 77, our only signing before the start of the season, you know, it wasn't Claudio Gentile or Gunter Netzer or Johan Cruyff. It was Alan Foggen for about 20 grand from Middlesbrough. And then later on we signed Jimmy Greenough, but I mean, there was no real money being invested into that side at the time.
Yeah, yeah. Who is your favourite footballer? Who is the best footballer of all time?
Well, for me, it's always going to be George Best.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I've seen other great ones. I mean, I always loved Colin Bell at City, to be fair. Thought he was an amazing player.
Of course, yeah. Is Colin Bell still around?
Yeah, he's still
alive, isn't he?
Still alive, I hope so.
No, because I went to... It was years ago now.
Oh, you better check now. Now you've got me in doubt.
Colin Barlow from my friend's dad played for Man City. I think he was the first director of Man City, and he died. I think Colin Bell was there at the funeral. I think I met him. I mean,
what it was with Colin Bell was, I had mates who were City fans, and also it was so cheap when I was a kid, and I grew up at the Brooks Bar end of Old Trafford, so we could walk to City, or we'd just hop on the 53, and it was about 3 stops. And so a mate of mine, God rest his soul, Dave Lindsay, who lived in the flats, Pitford Court, the old Seven Sisters as we called them, but I think there's only 2 of them left now.
Yeah.
So he liked City, and we go with him, and it was, you're talking 15p, you know, to get in, 10p, you know.
£100 now, isn't it?
20p, you know, for juniors. And in fact, the season United were in Division 2, it used to cost me 30p to stand up in the Stretford End paddock. I could sit down on them little narrow rulers in the Platt Lane end at City, and I think I saw just about every City home game that season.
Did you?
But you see, they were good to watch because they had 2 wingers. They weren't. They were similar to United in that way. They were a hard tackling, attacking side. But what was amazing about Bell was he was just so important to it. You know, you'd see games where they were struggling and they should have lost, but they'd get a draw or they'd win it just because of him. I remember them playing Derby County. I think the first time Derby County ever won it, and it was like they were losing 1-0, and it was like the 85th minute or something, and that stupid Helen with a bell, bidding, bidding. And then there's like a corner, I think it was, or a cross, and Bell just up there,
railed it in,
heads it in. Yeah. Amazing. Scored this great goal against Ipswich Town when Ipswich probably should have been the team that won the league in 74-75 season when United were in Division 2. And City played them on a Tuesday night, and they were the only team that I saw outplay City at Main Road that season. I think the only team that beat City at Main Road that season were Derby County when Franny Lee scores that goal. And look at his face, just look at his face. But I remember Bell got the ball on the right wing, and it, like George Best, he took it around 3 Ipswich players into the box, slotted it in, 1-1. But just amazing.
Glory days.
I shouldn't be talking about Colin Bell, should I? but he's left out of so many conversations. You talk about much better player than Frank Lampard, but when they talk about your Brian Robsons, your Stephen Gerrards, you know, Colin Bell deserves to be in the
Brian
conversation.
Robson doesn't get talked about enough, to be fair.
It does. I mean, Bell was, I don't know, kind of, he had that box-to-box element, but he was someone who did something with the ball. You know, he had skill, he had that kind of ability to get round a player. He was, you know, he had a striker's instinct for a goal. Just amazing.
Yeah.
In fact, he was at his best when he got the bad injury, you know, playing United in that League Cup game where they beat us 4-0. Oh. Paddy Roach in nets, you know, and then it was Martin Buchan tackled him and it did his knee in, and he never quite
recovered
came back
from
after that. No.
Okay, so 2 final questions we ask all our guests. First one, what would you say or give advice to a young Terry Christian?
Just keep going. I mean, life's for living, so it's not about goals. It's about enjoying what you're doing in the moment. Because if somebody talks to me, you know, you have that welling up of frustration, but that comes from other people and comparing yourself with other people, you know. So it's a bit like, oh God, I couldn't go on the school trip or whatever. But actually, when I think about my life's been fantastic because I've been able to go to gigs, you know, I always had nice girlfriends when I was younger. You know, in Derby was my favourite time. When I was never motivated by money, and people find that odd, but in a weird way, as long as I had enough money to go out and go on holiday, I mean, every day was a holiday for me. You know, I was out every night at gigs, blah, 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 you know, listening to records. I mean, I remember like first starting working on the radio, so I had like 5 shows a week and getting on mailing lists. And you go in every day, and you remember, comparatively speaking, albums were expensive in those days. And every day you go in and you got a free one. I felt like I was stealing off the record companies, you know, getting a You Can't Hide Your Love Forever orange juice with the promo stamp on the back and going, this is for free, I'd have bought this, and smelling it. And so every day was like Christmas Day. Wow. I wouldn't say birthday, because birthdays are crap in our house.
Have you always been happy then, or have you ever suffered from... Has it been a level playing field?
Oh, no, I'm up and down like no one's business. You know, I mean, you know, if you talk about... Obviously, you're always going to have mental health issues when you grow up.
Have you suffered yourself?
Well, yeah, because... But a lot of it comes from... You make poor choices because of how you feel about yourself. You do tend to put... You know, because of my background, you put other people's feelings first. Because that's... You know, you knew what you felt, that vibe of what your parents were carrying and your brothers and sisters, and there was that tension, and there was that feeling that, well, It can't ever really be happy. And then I'll never forget my mum, and this was a really peculiar thing, saying when I was 11 that you're too old for toys. And so it made you feel shame for having toys. I remember being in the first year at St. Bede's, and the first thing we did in history was the Roman invasion of Britain. And I was into history and the Romans and all that. And our Kev's mate had given him loads of these little Airfix soldiers, ancient Britons and ancient Romans, loads of them.
Yeah.
He was an only child, so he had no one to play with. So he gave them there, even with the chariots. And so we had a tiny bedroom that three of us, shared with like a narrow space on the lino like that between the beds. Mm-hmm. Bunk beds for me and our Kev and our Tony's bed.
Yeah.
And we'd set them up on the thingy, to have like this battle, a game. And my mum opened the bedroom door and turned around, and I just blushed and flushed because she caught me, age 11, playing with toys with my younger brother, but she let me off because he was only 8. So he still had 3 years of grace, Really
I know
weird.
that feeling as well, yeah.
No, I mean, it's really peculiar. And then often you think that what you want is wrong.
It's wrong.
I mean, I was so lucky when I worked on Radio Derby that, funnily enough, my producer there was Irish descent, and she was an ex-history teacher called Jan Rogers. Mm. So she had the same name as my sister who died, Janet, and she was exactly the same age as her.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that peculiar?
Yeah.
How life brings you things like that. I had great people who looked after me when I was at Radio Derby, which I've never had before or since, in terms of media and all of that.
Yeah.
It's a very cutthroat business with a lot of very narcissistic characters. And obviously for someone like me, I attract them. And then I've also got a way of, I'll take them on. But then they've got a way of making you look like the bad guy.
The bad
because
guy,
of
yeah.
reactive abuse.
When they start it.
Yeah. Which
Jerry,
they
do
do.
you mind me asking your sister, was it a health?
Burst appendix.
Oh God! So it was
and it made the front page of the Manchester Evening News because my mum had taken her to the doctors 5 times, and the doctor kept saying it's gastroenteritis, it's doing the rounds, take her home.
Oh, it's outrageous, and that's.
I mean,
that's
now you get big compensation, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you would.
Those days,
that's an absolute...
those days, nothing. And what was even worse is at the time when she died, so she went to hospital and died that night, and she then got buried in Stretford Cemetery, but my mum and dad couldn't afford a headstone that at the time cost 40 quid, so it was only when my dad took early retirement age 61 he bought the headstone, and that was 400 quid then, and that was the first time that there was a place there.
Yeah.
And what is it? It was like, and then so now my mum and dad are both buried in that same one.
Are they?
But weird, horrible.
I
mean, it doesn't bear thinking about really. You've got kids yourself, and well, even if you haven't got kids, it's like I remember, when the Manchester bomb thing happened, it's just so horrific in every way. That's what sent me to therapy.
Really?
Because I did that, that second anniversary that I wasn't completely comfortable about, with all the don't look back in anger and all that. Because I thought, well, do you know what? Someone set out to kill little girls. Yeah. Now, whatever that reason might have been, isn't for me to go into. But I don't know if I can forgive that. And then also, when you think about, that little girl Sassy and then the other one, and you just think that has ruined so many people's lives forever.
Yeah.
That and it's all their families and all their families to come, because that will always be there. That's
define their life. Yeah,
it's like a stain on the world. How can you ever really be happy when you've got that?
I don't know how people would get over that.
No. I
don't know how you get over that.
It's just terrifying. It's kind of.
And is it Safi's dad who's in the wheelchair?
Safi's had it, yeah.
She's in the wheelchair. Is he in the wheelchair?
I don't know. It's just like just everything about it. I mean, not just her. I mean, all of it. But it was kind of. So I thought I need to go to therapy really, because I knew that there was lots of things wrong with my life, and I'm glad that I did. So I went to therapy for 2.5 years, and I did NLP with a great woman called Maureen Fearon for about 2.5 years. And that helps you spot patterns in people's behaviours, like the toxic relationships you may be in that you've obviously had in the past. And you're going, because sometimes, because you don't put yourself forward, you let certain things go. Because you go, well, I won't be that fussed about that. But that's because you won't be that fussed because you're not very demanding. And I'm not, demanding really.
So that's neuro-linguistic programming, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, some of it's a bit woo-woo. But what it did help me with was spotting the patterns, asking the right... Well, not so much asking the right questions, I would always do that, but asking the right questions to get behind the motivations of the reasons. Because sometimes you can think, oh, this person just doesn't like me. And you go, well, that isn't quite what it looks like. So it was good.
Yeah.
It was... I found it kind of hard because I really had to concentrate at times. And I found some elements of it seemed a bit woo-woo, but actually, in terms of spotting the patterns in people's behaviour, there'll be a pattern. Do you know what I mean?
Course,
and also, I mean, you can always sense when someone's lying to you.
Yeah.
But it's like when you get the lies where they make up a lie whereby oh well, if I hadn't been really ill at the time, and then and that's to stop you probing further. Or, it's I was doing a favour for someone. And you go, so that's like, well, how dare you question me being good for someone who's having a hard time? And those are always lies, and you know it, but it's having the confidence to, even if you don't call it out, go, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Life would be so much easier without other people, wouldn't it?
Well, I mean, sometimes it's who you attract and who you're attracted to, so... my mum was great insofar if you think we grew up on nothing, and I mean literally nothing. I mean, it was my birthday, and I wrote about, the other day, 66, and the only birthday party I've had in my life was for my 9th birthday, and I was allowed to invite 4 mates around, right, into our little house, privately rented, obviously, crumbling down, slum, outside toilet, overrun with mice, for sandwiches and jelly and ice cream. And we didn't have a fridge, so you had to go to the shop to buy a block of ice cream to share out. And what was weird was when I was writing about my party, I put it on Facebook, and I thought, 2 of my mates who came to that party are still on Facebook now. One of them I see him quite a lot.
That's good. That's good.
Mike King, Pete Burgess, but so 2 out of the 4 mates. But so that, and so you grow up with quite low expectations. But all of us, including my sister who died, she just got her 11 plus results. So she'd passed. She died in the Easter holidays. That was hard for our Mary because she used to walk to school with her. Because they were at St. Joseph's, which was the little all-girls Catholic primary school attached to Loretto. The Loretto Grammar School in Moss Side at the time.
I went to Loretto in Altrincham.
Yeah. Well, it was the one in Moss Side. That was the clever one.
And,
Back in the day it was, yeah. But it was kind of... What is it? So she went to... Our Mary had to walk to school on her own after the Easter holidays. So that heartbreak again, is like...
Yeah, it's awful.
Hard to kind of picture. But we all passed our 11 plus.
Yeah.
And we all went to Loretto, St. Bede's. I mean, it is quite weird now because I'm quite against having worked with them, all the public school types. So sometimes just to wind them up, I do love annoying people, and that's an ADHD thing. I'm not actually going to man the barricades. I don't really care that much, but I do annoying people. So I'll put, every time a private school shuts, because of
you'd be like
the VAT, I go, the more of these cunt factories that are closed, the better. Right. And then it's all people coming at you, you know what I mean? Who kind of basically went to like some basically,
I went to private school, but I don't mind.
Yeah. But these guys, their idea of a good school was if it was approved.
Yeah.
And they're going, well, what about you? You went to St. Bede's. You hypocrite. And I go, yeah. Well, put the rest of it together. I'm one of 6 kids. My dad was a labourer. I said, and there was no Netflix to cancel in those days. Yeah. How the hell would he have afforded that? I went to a school that went private after I left.
Quite
a long time after I left. And, because it was all 11 plus in our day.
Yeah.
But although it was still, we were the Catholic equivalent of Manchester Grammar. And
Yeah, of
academically, it did better than them, because at Manchester Grammar, they had this weird thing where they would only do 6 O-levels. Obviously, they'd expect to get straight A's or A's and B's, GCEs. We used to do 10 or 11.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? A
Oh,
minimum
of course,
of 9
yeah, of course,
at Beads.
Yeah, of course.
But weird. And you had to have got at least 6 before you could stay on in the 6th form at Beads.
Yeah.
Which is a big mistake, because I'd have been better off going to a 6th form college.
Yeah.
Women and decent teachers.
Yeah. Better fun.
Rather than at that school. But yeah, it was so in that way, my mum, there was no room for teenage rebellion, and her affection was very transactional. So you get drawn into relationships that end up, well, if you're good, then I'll be nice to you, when really it shouldn't be like that. It should be a two-way equal thing.
Absolutely.
So again, there's that unhealthy dynamic
Yeah.
that you get drawn into.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I mean, my mum was quite funny, because our Kev was really bright. He used to come first in class all the way through Beads. And he did in Latin, but his teacher didn't really like him in Latin. So my mum she used to go to the parents' teachers' evening. My dad didn't have the patience for that, He might go with her sometimes, but normally not. And our Kev's Latin teacher, and he just got something mad like 100% in Latin. Who does that? And what is it? And he said yes. He said, but he's always talking in class and not paying attention.
There you go.
And my mum said, well, maybe the rest of the kids should do the same. and then when I was at St Alphonsus, we did these SAT things after we'd done our 11 plus, where it was just English, maths, and then again, a similar IQ test thing to the 11 plus, which is all it was. And I came first out of 88 kids. And my mum was working on the school dinners. And the nun, who was the headmistress, she took my mum into her room, and she went, she said, your Terence has come first in the, in his year. And mum said, oh yes, I believe so. And she said, he doesn't deserve it,
Oof.
He spends all his time looking out the window. My chair faced away from the window. You couldn't look out the window and you see the sky, because it was like up to there, then frosted glass, and then one peephole. And my chair was to the back of it, and I was taught by a 6'4" Irish psycho bloke called Mr. Fallon. If I'd have turned round like that, he'd have got hold of him. So you think, where's she got that from? That I'm looking out the window.
Just a blatant lie.
Too terrified of this guy to even look behind me. Even when he was throttling some other kid. The back things, I was right there in his eye line. We were on table 1.
So, final question. What's the future hold for Terry?
Well, again, I'm going to do more stand-up. I'm getting my books that I own into Kindle editions and then audio books. I've got another one that I've been writing for years, and I'm finally getting it organised, which is going to be a kind of history of Manchester music, because I've kind of lived through it all. So a lot of the black music that doesn't get mentioned, doesn't get covered, and I'm bringing together, obviously in a personal story, maybe from a more working class angle, but also what made Manchester a bit unique, and the great characters like the Graham Gouldmans, like the Bee Gees, that work ethic. Yeah. I remember, so it's called True Faith. So it's a history of Manchester music, but I've not thought of, I've written the introduction, and Elliot Rashman, who managed Simply Red, has offered to write the foreword, and then I've got about 80,000 words worth of notes, so it might be more than one book yet, but I will definitely do that as a legacy thing, as something to leave behind.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of the books about Manchester music aren't very well researched. They'll have some big, really clunky mistakes within the first 4 pages, and very few are actually written by people from Manchester. Yeah. It's all about trying to own the brand, and you go, well, you want to tell the story, really. You want to be a proper historian as much as you can. I mean, obviously, things are going to be from your point of view, or what you saw, or what you experienced, but often that stuff doesn't get included. So I'll do that. I mean, like I said, I'm only 66.
You've got ages left.
I've got at least another 4 years.
I was going to say it's terminal for all of us.
I know it sounds daft, but I really don't feel old inside, if
Yeah.
that makes any sense. I mean,
Hey,
I know.
Terry, we had Bill Roach in here a couple of weeks ago. One of my lifelong family friends. 94 years
94.
old.
Wow, amazing. I don't know if I'll make it that far.
I think we've had too much fun to make it that far, Terry, to be honest.
I mean, with me, with the drinking and, smoking for 34 years, that takes it out
Do you
of you.
still smoke now?
No, I gave up 10 years ago.
I think one of the last, probably it was at Vectra Studios, South Manchester Studios. You might have been smoking then, but I hate to
of course
say
it
it, that
would
was
have
10 years ago.
Yeah, it would have been
John Thompson was there, wasn't he?
Would have been longer ago than that.
Jeez, that's crazy, man.
It would have been longer ago than that.
Yeah.
Vector, because I think I did some editing there with Ro Barrett.
Yeah.
John Barrett's missus, who was Ro Newton.
Yeah.
Back in the day, and because funnily enough, when I first met her, I went down to the Old Grey Whistle test, and that was when I first met Andy Kershaw, and I went down because I love Gil Scott Heron, and he was
he's a
on
great
it.
singer. Yeah,
So
yeah.
in order to be able to interview him, I pulled that BBC internal thing with my old producer Jan, because she knew Trevor Bannister, Trevor Dance, who had taken over the Old Grey Whistle test, and he used to work with her at Radio Nottingham. So I went down there, and Simply Red, funnily enough, were on the same show. It was recorded in the day, and that's when I was chatting to Andy Kershaw. And then Andy Kershaw, I remember him chatting to Mick Hucknall out of Simply Red, because they'd done a charity gig for the Miners a couple of years earlier, when he was roadieing for Billy Bragg. And I think Mick Hucknall's band was then called Reds and the Boys before Simply Red, and they were like doing the support slot. But what was really weird about Mick Hucknall, I got on with him quite well, and then afterwards they had like a big spread, after the filming, and I'd just been on holiday for the first time, to Greece.
Yeah.
I'd never been, abroad, so to speak, and I really got into Tarama Salata. So they had some of that there. And I knew he was from Denton because, I was chatting to him. And I had some of that, and I went, it's nice, that Tarama Salata. And he went like this to me, he went, yeah, it could do with a bit more lemon juice, though. And I'm just joking, it's only banter. I went, ooh, so that's a bit sophisticated for a kid from Denton. He'd never speak to me either.
Was that the end of that? Yeah, the end of that.
Every time I saw him after that, and my ex-missus worked Simply Red, did all their big albums. He even had him on the road everywhere. He wouldn't even let on to her if she was with me.
That's outrageous.
And then he'd be with Salts. It was a guy that I knew, because he was from Hume, I was from Brooks Barn. So you knew anyone who was good at football around there. So I knew Salts even before he was in the Jazz Defectors and a dancer. And he was always big mates with Mick Hucknall, and they'd be around the place. So Salts, who'd known me forever, he'd be letting on to me and my missus, and Mick Hucknall wouldn't let on to either of us. Just because it was me, and because I'd gone, ooh.
Lemon juice.
Jeez, that's
Oh no,
crazy.
it might have been when I was doing the listings for the Evening News as well. I used to write something a bit snarky. You go, yeah, post-punk, but we've heard it all before, whatever. You'd write flattering things too on the gig listings. And then with Simply Red, they were playing G-Mex, and I just put sold out, and so was the gig. It was a cheap shot. I didn't even mean it. I like Simply Red. I didn't even mean it. They did their own thing. So it might have been that. Everyone used to read the Evening News back in the day. They used to sell like 250,000 copies on a Friday.
I think someone in the Evening News said about me, he's so wooden the other actors are getting splinters. So whoever that was, I'll find you and I will kill you.
Oh, no, but no, they could be. They got very snide later on. I mean, I just watched the. I'm going to bitch him off, and he deserves it anyway. But I used to work doing my copy, and across the desk from me was Andy Spinoza.
Yes, of course.
So,
yeah.
Spin Media, and he's just done his book now, which he sent to me.
Yeah.
Again, full of like big mistakes, timelines all wrong, you know what I mean? He's met this person before he'd met him, only by about 2 years to put himself at the centre of the action. But what was interesting was he talks about when I first started doing the Word after only about 2 weeks, and I sat opposite him and he was writing a diary page, he was like that on the phone. He went, fucking hell, Terry, that was Piers Morgan on the phone. Now, the Word when it started was on at 6 o'clock in the evening, and I was being paid 600 quid a show. Nothing. I wasn't, you know what I mean? And he went, well, what about him? I think, why would he be ringing up for me? I'm basically doing a glorified kids show at 6 o'clock. He says, have I got any dirt on Terry? I want to get him.
Nice.
But then he sent me a copy of Manchester Unspun, and this is what he said about me. He went, Terry, who spoke with an almost caricature Mancunian accent.
No, that's a proper Mancunian accent.
No. But I knew what the implication is.
Yeah.
And it was completely unnecessary. It had nothing, even as an aside. There's no need to say it.
No.
So I rang him up and I went, Andy, because he'd sent it me to read it and like review it. I went, Andy, you write this about, when we met, you went, Terry, who spoke with an almost caricature Mancunian accent. What did you mean by that? I knew quite well what he meant, right? He went, oh, well, I mean, I will have this conversation with you, Terry, but I'm just going out.
Of course he did.
That was 3 years ago. We've not had that conversation yet.
Since, because he's still out.
No. So, but as I said to him at the time, I said, and I knew what the implication was, and it's something that a lot of City fans try and snidely say. And I said to him, okay, so Andy, I grew up 1.1 miles south of Manchester city centre in Brooks Bar. So why would I sound like I'm an almost caricature Mancunian? Why would it not be a Mancunian? I said, I grew up a 5-minute walk away from MC Tunes. Would you describe him as having an almost caricature Mancunian accent? Or
Same
just
accent.
It's trying to undermine your credibility
and
and your authenticity.
Yeah, of course it is, yeah.
And it's kind of one of them. And so, a bit spiteful on media, obviously, when I first appeared on TV, the implication is since Manchester got hip in 88, 89, I suddenly went from speaking like this to going, hey, up,
like
mate.
that. I know.
Right? So, I've got a clip of that show, put it up there, I went, here I am in 1981 speaking with my caricature Mancunian accent, which is even stronger back then than it is now. But that's snideness.
Snide.
It is really snide. And again, it's done by people who want to imply you're as disingenuous as they are.
Of course.
And they're the ones that are disingenuous. And I could go into a lot of detail there about it. But they feel threatened. It's an anti-working class thing.
Yeah.
And they don't like that.
No. Absolutely.
It is quite funny because I'd get it from all sides. I'd get like too yobby, so I'm not a BBC4 person. And now you're getting, oh yeah, but you don't, you really, oh yeah, you went to private school, St. Bede's, and your accent's fake. And it's something amongst the City fans because I wind them up. So one of them says this, and it goes around as if there's some truth to it when there's no truth. Because you're never going to... All the people that grew up with me, they're all over. And I've got a massive family. They're all going, bloody hell. When did our kids start putting on that accent? It's a bit of a full-time job. And it doesn't get... You're not going to get a gig reading the fucking news, are you, with an accent like
and
this?
When you came in earlier, he was talking with RP. So, yeah, he's kept that going for ages.
But it is crazy like that. It's really weird. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. And I don't think other people quite get that. You know what I mean? You get a lot of very posh people who speak as if they're working class. You kind of your Johnny Vaughans and your people like that. But it's weird when you're actually...
I've worked with some people who have now gone on to other things, and they were from the north, and now they've moved south, and they're in television programmes, and all their accents have changed.
well, I mean, there is a pressure there sometimes, to be able to do different accents if you're an actor.
No, that's in real life.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah. When you start
the
softening the vowels and doing all the other stuff. I mean, for me, it would have just felt a bit odd to sand my accent down because, first of all, it would have taken me too long to do it. It can happen as a natural thing. I think certainly when you're a kid, but, I mean, there's still certain things I say that I think that sounds a bit Derby-ish. Because I was living in Derby for 6.5 years, but... Not really. I mean, this idea that you put something on and you do something in order to get on it, you think, well, that's the worst thing ever to do.
Yeah.
The best thing for me to have done would have been to get rid of the Manchester accent, and then my 2 National Sony Radio Awards would have got me on Radio 1.
Yeah, of course.
Because about 2 weeks after I won my second one, Simon Mayo worked 15 miles away in Nottingham, he got a job on Radio 1.
Of course.
I'm
Yeah,
going,
yeah,
well,
yeah.
where's his, what's on his CV?
Yeah.
What's his resume?
That's a wild. That's crazy.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing they didn't do in the 2010 Equalities Act was make socio-economic background a protected status. And that would have stopped people taking the piss out of my accent,
Yeah.
taking the piss out of my background. I mean, all my press when I was doing the word was thick, moron, cerebrally challenged, blah, 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 worst presenter ever on
I
TV.
remember.
Even I hardly made any mistakes doing the word.
I thought
This
you
is
I thought you're the best presenter
no,
ever.
this is an absolute myth.
Yeah, no.
Because I go, unless, I mean, it's a tricky show to do, so unless it was like someone shouting in your ear,
Yeah.
I didn't fluff lines, I didn't mess stuff up.
You
there was
didn't.
no autocue script on that show. And it was quite complicated because you're going from pre-recorded to live, satellite links. I mean, they were a nightmare.
The show was chaotic, I think.
Well, yeah,
That was-
but they made it that way. I mean,
Yeah.
what used to happen on the word was you'd have this, because so many times the satellite links, they couldn't get them up. So you'd have like someone like Katie, let's say, in Nashville with Tammy Wynette, in a hotel room, and they go, right, Terry, we're still having trouble getting the satellite link up from Nashville, but we'll try and get it by the start of part 2. If we haven't got it yet, reintroduce your guests, then ask them a question. If we think there's no chance of getting it, reintroduce your guests very quickly, and then go straight to the standby video item, Gangs and Guns in LA. Well, anyway, what happens? You come back after part 2, 350 people going "Roo," like that, and you hear, and your earpiece. You think, well, what is that? Which one is that? Because they're overexcited.
Yeah.
They're not being calm, especially our big boss Charlie Parsons. Like, he's more stressed than you are. So I go, what was that? Well, I'll play it safe. So I go, right, still with us. We've got da-da-da and da-da-da, and blah, blah, blah. Then I ask, Terry, go to the satellite link. And you're going, what? Boom. But yeah, I mean, it was an insane show. I mean, it was interesting because when Chris Evans did TFI, he used to come to the Word every week. And the one thing, because he's a control freak, I mean, I don't even know why he did a live show, because he just wants everything.
Yeah.
He'd script a lot. Hi, what's your name? You say what your name is, then I'll come back and I'll say this, then you say that. And that's how Evans works. And so he came down to the Word with his jotter every week. So I'd have a drink with him after. But I used to take the mickey out and I said, you're going to need a bigger anorak than that.
Yeah.
And the one thing he wasn't going to do was do all his interviews or any part of that show in front of 350 people. So he had a separate bit for the bands, didn't he? Then he had his own bit with the people who'd laugh at all the jokes and lines that Danny Baker had written for him.
Yeah, he had the big stage downstairs and then the steps upstairs.
And then because he wasn't into music and he was struggling a bit on the music side, he bought Pete Mitchell in. So Pete was the music. So that's why certain Manchester bands like Audio Web were on. He had New Order on, didn't he? He had Black Grape on.
Yeah.
But it was really funny when they did TFI, the album, and you're going,
Yeah.
Boo Radley's Wake Up Boo was on the Word.
Yeah.
Reef, show your hand, raise your hands, was on the Word.
Yeah.
Happy Mondays had split up by the time
Yeah.
TFI was on. That was on the Word.
Yeah.
You never had the Stone Roses on. Why are they on your album? You know what I mean? It's all like, like somebody just sort of taking it all over. Strange.
Terry, it's been an absolute honour to
Yeah,
have
see
you
what
on.
I mean? ADHD, I talk all day, wouldn't I?
No, listen, this has been the easiest interview ever. I just ask you a question and off we go. But it's been fascinating talking about Manchester and
Hey, cheers for that. No, thanks,
Terry.
man.
Thank you so much.
In my anecdotage,
your anecdotage.
it's terrible to be 66.
But thank you. Cheers, man.